Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku had Omnitrix and had massive harem? Part 20. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Dekiru 10 by phantomdanger. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Vacation is all I ever wanted. Setsuna, Mina, and Hagakure sang in unison, their voices blending as classes 1A and 1B made their way to the buses, the resort now a fond memory in the distance. Can't seem to get my mind off of you, Mina sang, twirling her bag in rhythm. Back here at home, there's nothing to do, ooh, Toru sang, twirling beside her. Now that I'm away, I wish I'd stayed. Tomorrow's a day of mine that you won't be in. Setsuna and Pony joined in, harmonizing as they swayed to the imaginary beat. Most of the students watched with amused smiles, some even nodding along. Kyoka groaned, her earphone jacks twitching in irritation. Do they have to turn this into a full-blown concert again? She slung her bag over her shoulder, shooting the singers an exasperated look. Ojiro chuckled from beside her, stretching his arms lazily. They're just hyped up, letting off some steam. He tilted his head, a relaxed smile on his face. Though, I'll admit, this has been the most laid-back week I've had in years. Kyoka let out a blissful yawn, her lips curving into a rare smile. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if we could guilt-trip the teachers into giving us another week. I second that, Yanagi said, her usual calm tone tinged with rare enthusiasm. This break was a nice change of pace. The time for relaxation has ended, Iida announced, adjusting his glasses with a sharp motion. We must now channel our energy back into our studies and training as aspiring heroes. Yanagi glanced at him, her pale eyes narrowing slightly. Is he always this intense? Yes, Kyoka replied dryly, her tone flat but laced with sarcasm. It's like his default setting. Though I can't say I'm exactly thrilled to be going back to class, Mina said as she slowed her pace to walk beside them, clutching her backpack straps. You're never thrilled about going to class, Kyoka replied dryly, earning a chuckle from Mina. Okay, fair point, Mina admitted with a shrug. But still, she clasped her hands behind her back, her tone softening. It was pretty cool just being normal teenagers for a change, ya know? Toru nodded, her invisible face lightly flushed. Yeah, making memories that don't involve our lives being in mortal danger for once. Kyoka snorted. Hate to break it to you, but I've got a feeling most of our memories will still end up being about life or death situations. Momo jogged up to them, slowing to match their pace. You know, Kyoka, you don't always have to be so cynical. She's not exactly wrong, though, Tokiyami said. Not helping, Tokiyami, Momo said with a small sigh. His sharp, raven-like head turned slightly. As heroes in training, danger is an inevitability. It shapes us, tests our resolve, and sharpens our skills. Midoriya stood beside Itsuka near the buses, helping load the last of Class 1B and A's bags. His sleeves were rolled up, and a focused yet cheerful expression lit up his face. All right, Class B, double-check your rooms to make sure you didn't leave anything behind, Itsuka called out. And remember to sit in your designated seats, Izuku added, glancing up from a suitcase he was hefting into the luggage compartment. Ooh, Midori. Do you mind if we switch seats with other people? Mina asked, her excitement palpable as she bounced on the balls of her feet. Before Izuku could answer, Iida interjected, arms flailing in his usual dramatic fashion. Ashido, we must respect the carefully structured seating order that we have been. Sure, as long as everyone agrees to it, Izuku said calmly, cutting Iida off mid-sentence. Iida froze, his mouth hanging open in shock, but Midoriya's structure. Thanks, Midori. She chirped, winking at him before turning to the others. Sato, Koda, you don't mind switching seats with me and Toru, right? Sato gave a casual thumbs up, and Koda nodded nervously, his hands fidgeting with his sleeves. As the students began filing onto the bus, Iida boarded with a defeated slump. Why does no one respect the seating order? He muttered under his breath. Moments later, Ochako arrived with a spring in her step, holding a small pile of neatly shrunk-down bags. Hey, Dekiru. I got Yui to shrink down all the stuff we won at the carnival. You mean the stuff you cheated to win, Kyoka teased. Tomato, Ochako replied with a dismissive wave. Anyway, here's your share. She handed the tiny bags to Izuku, who accepted them with a grateful smile. Thanks, Ochako. These are way easier to carry now, Izuku said, carefully stowing the shrunken items in his backpack. Class B had been boarding the bus next to them as Itsuka waved at him as she began to enter. See ya Izuku, Itsuka said. Izuku blushed before waving as Class B entered the bus. Class 1A soon entered their own bus. Location: Kamino Ward. Unknown apartment building. Pass. Tamura glanced at the file on the table, the name muscular printed in bold letters. His voice was dismissive, almost bored. Are you certain? The television monitor crackled with an authoritative tone. He's quite formidable. Why not recruit him? Tamura's crimson eyes narrowed, his fingers twitching dangerously over the edge of the file. Look at his track record, he sneered. He's a wild card. The guy's only in it for the thrill of a fight and to sat his bloodlust. And we could provide him a target to direct that bloodlust, the monitor suggested coldly. Tamura scoffed, tossing the file aside. He doesn't seem like the type to play well with others. He'll probably turn on anyone who annoys him or worse, kill someone who's actually useful. He'd throw the entire operation into chaos. Kurogiri's calm, measured voice broke in. True, but tools such as him should not be discarded so hastily. His power could be invaluable. Tamura clicked his tongue, annoyed. Ever since the hero killer's capture, every lowlife with a grudge has been crawling to join the league. We'll find someone else. And what if Muscular doesn't take no for an answer? The monitor's voice held a hint of challenge, static crackling ominously. Tamura smirked darkly, his hand hovering over the file as if to decay it. Then we'll deal with him like any other pest. The league doesn't need a rabid dog unless we're the ones holding the leash. He could be a potential obstacle for one Izuku Midoriya, Kurogiri said, his calm voice cutting through the room. Tamura flinched, his irritation evident as his fingers twitched near his neck, a visible effort to restrain himself from clawing at his skin. TCH. The doctor's working on a counter for that pest. He won't be stealing the spotlight this time, he spat, his tone sharp with disdain. Last time, we underestimated him, and it cost us. But now? We won't be playing so recklessly. Still, the television monitor chimed in, its voice deliberate. Muscular could serve as a powerful piece on the board. Try not to dismiss him entirely. Tamura's eyes darkened, and a crooked smirk tugged at his lips. Yeah, I get it. He's like a high-damage character with zero teamwork. Sure, you can carry with him if you keep feeding him enemies, but he's just as likely to throw the match if things don't go his way. I don't need a troll ruining our game. Kurogiri tilted his head slightly, and yet, if deployed correctly, even such a character can turn the tide. Tamura snorted, leaning back in his chair. Fine, we'll keep him in the roster for now. Well done, Tamura. Now, if I'm correct, Jiren will soon be arriving with a potential new recruit, the television said, its tone laced with anticipation. Tamura gave a curt nod, his hand absently scratching his neck. Yeah, someone called. Zombozo? The monitor flickered briefly, the voice on the other end thick with disdain. Zombozo. It hissed, the name practically dripping with venom. Tamura's eyebrows knit together in confusion. Master? Before the voice could respond, a low chuckle echoed from the shadows, followed by the rhythmic click of footsteps. Both Tamura and Kurogiri stiffened, their eyes snapping toward the source of the sound. Oh, is the Demon Lord still sulking over that little misunderstanding from over a century ago? The voice drawled, its tone mockingly sweet. A cold shiver crept down Tamura's spine as a figure emerged. His yellow eyes gleamed unnervingly, their glow piercing the shadow cast by his tall top hat. The man's painted grin stretched wide, exuding an air of grim delight. His outfit was as unsettling as his presence. A gray and white jumpsuit with oversized buttons, a dark blue and cyan jacket, and black gloves that flexed menacingly. His top hat bore a cyan ball at its peak, completing the eerie ensemble. Huh? Who the hell are you? Tamura demanded, his fingers curling into fists, irritation flaring at the intrusion. The man tilted his head, his painted smile somehow growing wider. You were just talking about me, weren't you? Tamura's eyes narrowed, the tension thick in the air. You're Zombozo? You're a clown? Zombozo's grin turned cold, his tone mockingly playful. Clown? Oh, no, 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 my boy. I'm the ringmaster of despair, the maestro of misery. And you? He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper, or just another audience member waiting for the show to start. Tamura sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. I'm not here for some circus act. If you're supposed to be useful, prove it. Zombozo's eerie laughter echoed through the room like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, does little Tenko not enjoy the circus? Tamura froze. His fingers twitched, halting just short of scratching his neck. His bloodlust thickened the air, suffocating and oppressive. What did you just call me? Tamura's voice was low, dangerous. His crimson eyes darkened, glaring daggers at the clown. The bar table beside him crumbled into dust with a mere touch, the sound of disintegration sharp against the tense silence. Zombozo tilted his head, feigning innocence, his wicked grin widening. Why, Tenko, of course. That was it. Tamura surged forward, a blur of pure rage, hands stretched to end the clown then and there. Yet, when his fingers closed, there was nothing but empty air. A soft chuckle echoed from behind. My, Zombozo teased, now leaning casually against the wall, his shadow stretching like a predator. Seems Tenko hasn't learned patience. All for one must have his hands full with you. Tamura spun around, his face twisted in fury. The mention of his real name had pierced through his armor, digging into the fragile remnants of the boy he used to be. His breathing was uneven, his nails now clawing at his neck as if trying to rid himself of a phantom itch. Don't say that name. His voice was venomous, each word spat like a curse. But Zombozo only chuckled, his voice dripping with cruel amusement. Touched a nerve, did I? Funny how the past sticks with you, like old scars that itch. Or in your case, decay. Tamura's hand shot toward him again, his frustration boiling over, but Kurogiri swiftly intervened, stepping between them. That's enough, both of you. His voice was calm yet firm, a stabilizing force amidst the rising chaos. Zombozo raised his hands in mock surrender, his grin unyielding. Relax. Just a little clowning around. He gave a dark laugh, his eyes gleaming with malice. No hard feelings, right, Tenko? Tamura's jaw tightened, his hand clenched into a fist, veins visible as he forced himself to stand down. His glare didn't waver. Call me that again, and I'll make sure you never laugh again. Zombozo's grin never faltered. We'll see about that. For now, let's focus on the bigger show, shall we? Zombozo's eerie laughter echoed through the room like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, does little Tenko not enjoy the circus? Tamura froze. His fingers twitched, halting just short of scratching his neck. His bloodlust thickened the air, suffocating and oppressive. What did you just call me? Tamura's voice was low, dangerous. His crimson eyes darkened, glaring daggers at the clown. The bar table beside him crumbled into dust with a mere touch, the sound of disintegration sharp against the tense silence. Zombozo tilted his head, feigning innocence, his wicked grin widening. Why, Tenko, of course. The sound of that name snapped something deep inside Tamura. Tamura surged forward, a blur of pure rage, hands stretched to end the clown then and there. Yet, when his fingers closed, there was nothing but empty air. A mocking chuckle echoed from behind. Too slow, Zombozo teased, now perched lazily on a bar stool as though nothing had happened. Didn't all for one teach you better? Or is little Tenko still struggling with the basics? Tamura spun around, his face twisted in fury. The mention of his real name had pierced through his armor, digging into the fragile remnants of the boy he used to be. His breathing was ragged, his teeth bared like a feral animal. Don't say that name. His voice was venomous, each word spat like a curse. But Zombozo only laughed, cruel and gleeful, feeding off Tamura's rage. Touched a nerve, have I? Poor Tenko, still clinging to the past like a rusty chain. Tell me, does the weight of those hands make you feel safe? Or trapped? Tamura's hand shot toward him again, his frustration boiling over, but Kurogiri swiftly intervened, stepping between them. That's enough, both of you. His voice was calm yet firm, a stabilizing force amidst the rising chaos. Zombozo's grin remained as he raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course, of course. Just having a bit of fun. Isn't that what the League is all about? Chaos and destruction. With a little humor on the side. Tamura's gaze narrowed to slits, his eyes glowing with malice. He scratched at his neck furiously, the motion violent enough to draw blood, his breath ragged and unsteady. The room grew thick with the oppressive weight of his rage. Enough, he hissed, his voice strained with barely contained fury. Stop with the games. The voice of All for One cut through the tension, calm yet commanding. Zombozo. Quit your antics now. Zombozo's grin stretched unnaturally wide, his eyes gleaming with malice. Ah, sorry, old friend. Couldn't resist. You know me love to keep things lively. He let out a low chuckle, tilting his head like a predator eyeing its prey. Now, what's this I hear about an attack on UA? Sounds like my kind of party. Sue, how was it? How was what? Toru stammered, her voice slightly higher than usual, a faint blush creeping across her face. Mina narrowed her eyes, pouting as she folded her arms. Oh, don't play dumb, Missy. Toru tried to look away, her body shimmering before fully vanishing, but Mina wasn't having it. With a mischievous grin, she lunged, her hands expertly grabbing the invisible girl. Oh no, you're not disappearing on me now, Mina declared, her playful punches landing on Toru, who let out a series of muffled, ow. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You and Midori, fireworks, kiss, spill it. Okay. Geez, Toru squeaked, her face now a vibrant shade of red, even if no one could see it. The two were seated at the back of the bus, Class 1A buzzing with lively chatter as they returned from the trip. I never said we kissed, so. Toru mumbled, her voice trailing off, the fluster clear in her tone. Mina raised a brow, her arms crossed as she leaned closer. Girl. Toru sighed in defeat, her voice barely above a whisper. All right, fine. We might have kissed. Mina's face lit up, and she immediately scooted closer, practically vibrating with excitement. How was it? Did he pull you close? Was it soft? Did he use tongue? Did he, oh my gosh, did he grab your butt? Mina's eyes sparkled with over-the-top enthusiasm. Toru yelped, her embarrassment hitting its peak. Whoa, hold up. It wasn't like that at all. Honestly, Mina, it's so obvious you've never had a boyfriend. Mina gasped dramatically, clutching her chest as if Toru had struck her. Excuse you, first of all, rude. Second of all, she smirked, leaning back, when I kiss Midoriya, he's not gonna know what hit him. I'm bold like that. Toru let out a laugh, shaking her head. Bold? Please, you turn into a stammering mess whenever he's within 5 feet of you. Mina blushed furiously, sitting upright to defend herself. That's not true. I'm always bold. Everyone knows I'm super confident, and I'm way more physically affectionate than Yui. Toru giggled, her invisible shoulders shaking. Despite liking the same boy, there wasn't a hint of animosity between them. If anything, Toru found their shared dynamic hilarious. Mina crossed her arms, her blush deepening to a shade of lilac. Okay. Maybe he makes me a little nervous sometimes, she muttered. Toru chuckled, her teasing tone evident. A little? Mina groaned, burying her face in her hands. Shut up. Toru giggled softly, her shimmering form momentarily flickering as Mina leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Anyway, Mina began, a sly grin spreading across her face. How was the kiss? They say your first kiss is supposed to taste like strawberries or something. Did it? Huh? Was it all sweet and magical? Toru's face flushed a deeper red. She fidgeted, her hands clasping her invisible knees. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but Midori wasn't my first kiss. Mina froze, her face turning comedically black and white as if someone had drained all the color from her. Oh, right, she muttered, slumping back against the seat. I forgot you had a boyfriend before UA. Toru chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of her head. Why yeah. It wasn't really anything serious, though. Her voice softened as her thoughts drifted back to the fireworks. But this, it felt different. There were actual fireworks, you know. Figuratively and literally. Mina's color instantly returned as she sat up straight, her grin widening. Ooh, now that's what I'm talking about. Fireworks, huh, so, Was it all tingly and romantic, like in the movies? Did your heart feel like it was gonna burst? Toru smiled faintly, her invisible cheeks still warm. I guess, yeah, it kind of did. Mina sighed dreamily, clasping her hands together. Ah, that's so cute. Now I'm totally jealous. The rest of Class 1A was lost in their own conversations, unaware of the exchange happening at the back of the bus. Izuku sat between Momo and Tsuyu, both of them quietly engrossed in their books as the bus hummed along the road. Izuku twisted the dial of the Omnitrix, feeling it click with each turn before he adjusted it again. Tsuyu and Momo were quietly absorbed in their books. Izuku, as he continued turning the dial, hesitated before speaking up. Mr. Aizawa. The pro-hero stirred awake from the front seat, yawning before glancing over his shoulder. What is it, Midoriya? Do aliens have an ultimate form? Izuku asked, his curiosity piqued. Aizawa blinked at the question, momentarily confused. Huh. Momo and Tsuyu both looked up from their books, turning their attention to Izuku. The Omnitrix mentioned something about an evolution function, Izuku explained. I was kind of hoping you might know something about it. Aizawa yawned again. No, not typically. Well, a few aliens do have what's called awakenings. Awakenings, like quirks, Tsuyu wondered aloud. Yeah, but only the most hardened warriors and powerful beings of those species can reach such a level, Aizawa said. Even then, it's rare. I doubt you could reach that kind of strength. Izuku felt a metaphorical arrow pierce through him at Aizawa's bluntness. That's a little harsh, Mr. Aizawa. Tsuyu said. It's not that I doubt your abilities, Midoriya, Aizawa clarified. But you'd need to train for a long time to reach that level of power. Complete focus is required. Most aliens take centuries just to get halfway there. Centuries? Momo asked, surprised. Aizawa shrugged nonchalantly. Humans have a relatively short lifespan compared to other species. Plus, there are other factors, rituals some species have to undergo, unknown aspects you may need to learn to use, and so on. Izuku slumped in dejection, feeling a bit discouraged. Ooh, is it kind of like achieving Super Saiyan Blue? Kaminari suddenly piped up from the back row. Tsuyu, Momo, and Izuku turned to him, who was sitting with Kyoka and Ochako. Yeah, Kaminari continued, you know in Dragon Ball, Goku had to train for a really long time and push his body to the limit to reach Super Saiyan Blue. He had to master his control over both ki and his emotions to unlock that power. Dork, Kyoka muttered, not even looking up from her phone. Dragon Ball. Oh, that odd show with the Saiyans, Aizawa commented, causing everyone to look at him with widened eyes. He glanced at them before returning to his nap. Honestly, I don't get why they'd make an anime about a bunch of battle-crazed warriors. Izuku blinked, processing the information. Kaminari's eyes lit up, and his inner anime nerd ignited. Wait, I can turn into Goku. He can turn into Goku. Kaminari exclaimed. Aizawa's eyebrow twitched, clearly done with the conversation. Shut up. Izuku's face lit up with excitement, practically vibrating in his seat. I can throw ki blasts, he said, grinning ear to ear. Momo, sitting beside him, smiled softly at his enthusiasm. You seem excited, she remarked with a hint of amusement. Ribbit, Tsuyu added casually. Not too surprising. If you could turn into someone like that, you'd be pretty unstoppable, she said, her eyes sparkling with interest. Huh, Tsu, didn't think you'd be into that kind of thing, Ochako said, surprised. Tsuyu shrugged, looking nonchalant. I watched it with Satsuki a lot when I was taking care of him and Samadare. Kinda grew on me, she explained, her voice as calm and matter-of-fact as ever. Ah, that sounds lovely, Momo said, clasping her hands together with a warm smile. I wish I had siblings. It sounds like such a fun and fulfilling experience. Tsuyu nodded thoughtfully. I love taking care of my little brother and sister, she said with a small, fond smile. Doing Satsuki's hair, helping him with schoolwork, and watching anime with Samadare Ribbit, it's the best part of my day. Kyoka leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. Sounds like a nightmare to me. No offense, but I don't think I'd want siblings. Too much work. Plus, I like my privacy and me time. Come on, Kyoka, Ochako said with a playful grin. I bet you'd have fun with a younger sibling. You'd still have plenty of time to blast your music and chill out. Kyoka raised an eyebrow, smirking slightly. You clearly don't know how clingy kids can be. Trust me, I'd be the crankiest big sister ever. Though, Sue, Izuku chimed in curiously, don't your parents work a lot? Do you really get much time for yourself? Suyu put a finger to her chin, her expression neutral. Ribbit, not really, she admitted bluntly. But I don't mind. See, Kyoka said, gesturing toward Suyu. Total energy drain. I need my solitude, thank you very much. Momo hummed thoughtfully, resting her chin on her hand. I think I'd enjoy having siblings. My home is so large that I think it would feel more lively with little brothers or sisters around. It can be fun, Suyu said, nodding. But being the caretaker is a lot of work. You've got to cook, clean, and keep an eye on them all the time. It can be tiring, Ribbit. Still, she added with a rare, gentle smile, I love every minute of it. Seeing Satsuki smile after I braid her hair or hearing Samadare laugh at his favorite anime makes it all worth it. Ochako smiled softly. That's so sweet, Sue. I bet they really look up to you. Probably more than we look up to Aizawa-sensei, Kyoka said dryly, earning a collective laugh from the group. Zombozo. All for One's voice crackled through the monitor, calm yet laced with unmistakable disdain. From his side of the screen, his piercing gaze observed the scene unfolding. I had hoped your disappearance 20 years ago meant you had finally perished. Zombozo chuckled darkly, leaning forward as if savoring the moment. Ah, missed me, did you? Sorry to disappoint, but I've been busy. I was busy in America spinning nightmares into reality, spreading whispers and myths feeding the old hunger. His smile widened into something grotesque, his eyes gleaming with cruel delight. Besides, how could I resist? That blonde bunny, All Might, was spreading sunshine and rainbows everywhere. The sheer happiness he left in his wake was simply divine. He licked his lips slowly, savoring the memory. It was like an all-you-can-eat buffet of joy and false hope. His tongue darted out like a serpent's, licking his lips hungrily. Tamura's nails raked across his neck, his breathing uneven as violent flashes of a dog, a woman, and a little girl flickered through his mind. Tamura, All for One's voice remained steady, commanding. Control yourself. Do not let this clown unhinge you. Tamura drew a deep, ragged breath, his blood-stained nails trembling as he clenched his fists. He dropped into a chair, his glare sharp enough to pierce steel. I don't like you, clown. Ah, why the hostility, Tenko? Zombozo taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. This time, Tamura's glare intensified, but he remained seated, refusing to rise to the bait. Why are you here, Zombozo? All for One's voice cut through the tension, calm and cold. Zombozo casually dropped into a seat, propping his feet up on the table with an air of defiance. I heard about your little plans for UA. Quite the ambitious move. The grapevine's been buzzing about it. Tamura scoffed, his voice venomous. So, you want in? Zombozo smirked, his eyes glinting with dark amusement. Yes, and no. He stood slowly, his shadow stretching ominously across the room. I don't just want to join your raid. I want to make it unforgettable. All for One's voice remained steady, but there was a hint of intrigue now. Unforgettable, elaborate. Zombozo leaned forward, his grin widening. You're still green, Tamura. Your league wants to send a message to the world, don't they? To shatter their hope and plunge them into despair. His voice dropped to a sinister whisper. Let me help you make that message loud and clear. All for One's voice resonated from the monitor, cold and deliberate. An intriguing proposition, Zombozo. But what is it you truly desire in return for this alliance? Zombozo tilted his head toward the screen, his painted grin never faltering. I'll admit, All for One continued, his tone deliberate, your unique touch could leave quite an impression on the aspiring heroes of UA. And as it happens, I have someone in mind for you to test your twisted talents on. Zombozo let out a low, guttural laugh, clutching his chest theatrically. How cruel. Can't a humble clown lend a hand in shaping the next generation of villainy without expecting a handout? His voice dripped with mock indignation. All for One's tone didn't waver. You never act without personal gain. Speak plainly. Your kind always hungers for something. Whose suffering do you crave this time? Zombozo's eyes gleamed with sadistic glee. Guilty as charged, he admitted, his voice a low growl. I'm a man of refined tastes, after all, Zombozo purred, his voice oozing mock sophistication. One of those bright-eyed UA brats will do nicely. I'm craving someone special. Someone I can toy with, break apart piece by piece, and drain until there's nothing left but an empty shell. All for One's voice came through, cold and dismissive. Man, let's not delude ourselves. You're a far cry from anything human. Zombozo let out a gravelly chuckle, leaning into the insult. Now, All for One, let's not air out my little secrets. Wouldn't want to spoil the mystery, would we? All I need is someone to squeeze dry like a sponge at a pool party. His grin widened, teeth flashing like a predator sizing up its prey. Kurogiri's voice cut through, calm but laced with tension. And who, exactly, do you have in mind? With an exaggerated flourish, Zombozo reached into his coat, pulling out a photo with slow, deliberate movements. He slammed it onto the table, his chuckle deep and twisted. Tamura's hand twitched, his bloodshot eyes narrowing as he recognized the spiky-haired scowl in the image. Kurogiri's glow flickered with quiet unease. Katsuki Bakugo, Zombozo hissed, his voice gleefully venomous. A little firecracker just waiting to be snuffed out. He'll be delicious to break and even better to devour. From the other side of the room, All for One exhaled softly, the faintest hint of exasperation ghosting over his lips. If he had eyes, he might have rolled them, though such an outward display of irritation would hardly suit his calculated demeanor. He had endured this particular buffoon's antics for far longer than he cared to recall. Zom, he began, only to falter mid-word, his tone shifting to one of intrigued silence as something familiar yet unexpected clawed at his senses. A connection, a pulse, not unlike the tether he had once felt to One for All, but sharper. Stronger, immediate, recognition flared within him like a dark ember sparking to life. Dr. Garaki, ever attuned to his master's moods, paused his work on the grotesque abominations suspended in the glowing green fluid of the massive containment tubes. The creatures clawed weakly at the glass, their malformed limbs illuminated by the eerie light. Garaki glanced up, concern etched into his hunched posture. Master. The single word was both a question and a plea for guidance. All for One's scarred lips stretched into a slow, menacing smile, the kind that promised devastation. He inhaled deeply, savoring the moment as if the very air had been enriched by this revelation. It seems my dear Kevin is finally beginning to realize his potential, he murmured, his voice a velvety mix of paternal pride and sinister intent. His fingers twitched slightly, as though imagining the strings of a puppet beneath his control. Oh, Kevin, what intriguing little mischief are you up to now? His words dripped with a dark amusement, yet beneath the surface lay something more insidious. A possessive hunger, coiled and waiting. It had been a week since the students returned from their much-needed vacation. Now, they found themselves in the placid days between spring and summer, with their training resuming in full swing. Next, Midoriya, Aizawa's monotone voice echoed across the ruined cityscape, as indifferent as ever. The homeroom teacher's tired eyes scanned the group perched on the third floor of a dilapidated building. The structure creaked ominously, its collapse seemingly inevitable. All right, Izuku said, rolling his shoulders to loosen up. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Good luck, Dekiru. Ochako's cheerful voice rang out as she leaned out of the line of girls. Her smile was radiant, her enthusiasm contagious. Kyoka gave him a quick thumbs up, her usual nonchalant smirk on her face, while Momo offered an encouraging nod. Mina, Toru, and even Tsuyu flashed him supportive smiles. Seeing all their expressions made Izuku's face flush red, his heart racing a little faster. He responded, steeling himself as he stepped toward the emergency chute, a simple but effective tool designed for rapid evacuation from tall buildings. The tube groaned slightly under his weight as he slid down, his hands steadying himself against the walls. For a brief moment, it felt like he was a kid on a playground slide. After the Ghost Freak incident, many students from both Class 1A and Class 1B had opted for counseling sessions with Hound Dog. The memories of that terrifying encounter and the USJ attack were still fresh in their minds. Hup! Izuku landed on the ground below with a slight bounce, brushing himself off. Good, boys are done. Girls, you're next. Yaoyorozu, you're up, Aizawa instructed without missing a beat. Yes, sensei, Momo replied confidently, stepping into the chute. On the ground, Mineta sat with his back to the wall, looking uncharacteristically pensive. Usually, this would have been the perfect moment for him to ogle, but instead, he just sighed, his head drooping. Hey, you okay, Mineta? Izuku asked, noticing the unusual lack of energy from his classmate. Mineta let out another sigh, rubbing the back of his head. It's just, I dunno, man. Let me guess, Kaminari chimed in, folding his arms like a disapproving parent. You're upset because you can't sneak a peek at the girls on their way down. What? No, that's not it, Mineta shot back, his face flushing with embarrassment. Mineta, Kaminari said again, his tone skeptical. Dude, come on, Mineta, fine, Mineta groaned, throwing his hands up. It's just, after everything we've been through, the Ghost Freak stuff, the USJ attack, the flood training, this feels kinda dull, you know. Like, what's the point of this exercise? Suyu, who had just landed gracefully, tilted her head, her large eyes blinking slowly. Ribbit, that's surprising coming from you, Mineta, she said. Though I can't say I don't agree, Tokiyami muttered, his voice low and serious. We should be preparing for worse scenarios. Danger could be lurking around any corner, and we must be ready to face more challenging obstacles. True, Momo added thoughtfully. Proper preparation ensures our readiness for unexpected events. Every lesson contributes to our growth as heroes. On the plus side, Kaminari said with a sly grin, rescue training's been a lot quieter since a certain blonde with anger issues got banned from heroics training. Bakugo's face immediately twisted with rage. Clad in his gym uniform, he was the only one barred from participating in practical exercises, forced to watch while his classmates continued their hero training. Like I give a crap. This evac training is boring as hell anyway. Bakugo snapped, crossing his arms. Spoken like someone who sucks at saving people, Zero quipped, leaning against the wall with a smirk. How can you say that? Iida exclaimed, his arms flailing dramatically. Any hero worth their salt must prioritize rescues above all else. Learning to utilize life-saving tools such as this chute is essential. You should be drowning in despair at your inability to participate. TCH, like I care, Bakugo scoffed. We've all got our strengths. Let someone else handle the damn rescuing, I'll crush the villains. Do you truly intend to become a hero someday? Iida asked, his voice dripping with disappointment. Izuku, sensing the brewing tension, stepped in. Take it easy, Iida. Don't let him get under your skin. He's not entirely wrong, though, Todoroki interjected, his tone calm and detached. Everyone has their strengths. Izuku nodded. Yeah, some of my forms aren't great for certain situations. Todoroki's expression didn't change. It's hard to picture Bakugo saving anyone, he said bluntly. Say that again, icy hot. Bakugo barked, sparks flying from his palms. No doubt, he'd probably hurt him even worse. Kaminari said enthusiastically, a wide grin on his face. Keep talkin', Sparky, and I'll make you my first rescue. Bakugo barked, a small explosion sparking in his palm. Before he could do anything else, Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around his arm and giving him a smack on the back of the head. Citizens don't get to use their quirks, Aizawa said flatly. Bakugo growled, cross veins pulsing on his forehead as he glared at the ground in frustration. Just then, Mina emerged from the chute, dusting herself off as she approached the group. What's up? Why's Bakugo looking extra grumpy today? Nothing new, Zero said with a shrug. He's just whining about rescue training again. Mina chuckled. Figures. Ochako stepped closer to Izuku, her voice soft with concern. He didn't say anything to you, did he? Izuku waved it off with a smile. Don't worry, we were just talking about everyone's strengths. Bakugo's not exactly a rescue specialist. Shut up, you damn Deku. Bakugo growled from beside Aizawa, his frustration evident. Kyoka snorted, crossing her arms. Not exactly the best. He's practically the worst when it comes to rescuing. Come on, guys, Hiroshima said, trying to ease the tension. We all have strengths and weaknesses, right? That's what makes us a team. Momo nodded thoughtfully. Exactly. We each excel in different areas, which is why teamwork is crucial, she said with confidence. Yeah, but I definitely suck at rescue operations, Kaminari admitted, scratching the back of his head with a sheepish grin. Before anyone could respond, Aizawa's voice cut through the chatter, sharp and serious. Have you all forgotten why you're here? His eyes glowed a dangerous red, and the energy around the class instantly dropped. The students fell silent, realizing they'd pushed their luck too far. Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temple in frustration. Different strengths or not, excuses like that won't cut it when you're actually on the scene, Aizawa continued, his voice steady and unwavering. Pro heroes are willing to do whatever it takes to help. That's what makes them professionals. He scanned the group, locking eyes with each student before continuing. When the police and rescue teams can't make it on time, it's up to you to guide the evacuees to safety. You need to be prepared for that. Toru raised her hand, her tone curious. Isn't it faster to save them for real, instead of just guiding them or whatever? Momo immediately understood the question. I believe Mr. Aizawa is talking about mass evacuation, she said, looking to Aizawa for confirmation. Exactly, Aizawa said, nodding once. Saving one or two people is one thing, but when you're dealing with a large group, rescue tools become invaluable. You don't want to find yourselves struggling because you lack the basic knowledge when the time comes. That's why these tools are part of the curriculum. He paused, his gaze narrowing on Bakugo. Understood, Bakugo. Bakugo grumbled, barely acknowledging him. Yeah, whatever, he muttered, his tone flat. Nearby, Midoriya gave a small gasp, his eyes lighting up as he began muttering furiously under his breath. Of course, and I bet we could even combine these rescue tools with our quirks for mass evacuations. Ochako could make debris float, Zero's tape could reinforce the chute. Spider Monkey could use webs to create a safety net at the bottom, or Diamond Head could form a crystal cone too. There he goes again, Zero said, his expression an amused deadpan. Well, he and Yaomomo are the only ones who can whip up combo strategies on the fly, Kirishima added with a grin, crossing his arms. Bakugo's eye twitched in irritation, fists clenching at his sides. Anyway, next up is, Aizawa began, only to be cut off. I am here. From the sky, All Might's booming voice echoed as his towering figure descended, blocking the sunlight. The number one hero landed in a textbook superhero pose, the ground trembling beneath him as he grinned broadly. Apologies for my tardiness, young heroes. On my way here, I ran into a troublesome villain who simply insisted on being apprehended. Aizawa's eye twitched, his usual deadpan breaking slightly. This was supposed to be your class, he muttered under his breath. While Aizawa looked exasperated, Midoriya's face lit up like a child meeting their idol. I saw it online during lunch. You caught that bank robber so quickly. Indeed, but what the news hasn't reported yet is that another fiend was lurking inside the vault. All Might said proudly, striking a triumphant pose. Too awesome, Midoriya whispered in awe. From the side, Kyoka rolled her eyes and extended one of her jacks, poking him in the arm. Maybe save the fanboying for later, she said dryly. Her other jack subtly pointed at Aizawa, who stood nearby with glowing eyes and a scowl. Izuku gulped, causing the girls to giggle quietly. All Might cleared his throat, looking a bit sheepish under Aizawa's piercing glare. Ahem, young Midoriya, your enthusiasm is always appreciated, but let's focus. He straightened, flaring his cape dramatically. Now, if you recall the flood rescue exercise from a few weeks ago. You mean the one Bakugo totally botched, which made the rest of us fail? Kyoka interjected bluntly, arms crossed. Shut it, earphone jack. Bakugo snapped, his palms crackling. Exactly that exercise, All Might said, smoothly ignoring the outburst. Today, you'll have the chance to redo it. Excitement rippled through the group. Redo, yes, Kaminari shouted, practically sparking with enthusiasm. Hell yeah, Kirishima cheered, pumping his fist with a confident grin. This is our chance to redeem ourselves, Tokiyami said with a grave tone. We must ensure our ignoble failure is not repeated. Shoji nodded, his calm voice carrying over the buzz. We've been through it once before. This time, we can anticipate and adapt. Mina gave an exaggerated sigh of relief. Good thing. I'd rather not deal with Bakugo screwing it up again. Oi, you pink freak. Say that again, and I'll blast you. Bakugo barked, sparks flying from his hands. All Might raised a hand to calm the chatter. Now, remember, this is just a practice session. In a few weeks, there will be a much larger scale rescue exercise. That one will contribute significantly to your semester evaluation. Mina gulped audibly. Semester evaluation. Talk about pressure. Kaminari groaned, slumping forward dramatically. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. The evaluation will focus on how you perform as a class. It's not just about individual performance. Your ability to work together, communicate, and act as a cohesive team will determine your grade. You pass or fail as a class. The students exchanged nervous glances but nodded in understanding. Toru raised her hand, tilting her head. What exactly will this exercise involve? Ochako chimed in, her curiosity piqued. Yeah, will it be like the flood exercise we did before? Suyu placed a finger on her chin, her voice calm and even. I hope so. I'm better suited for water rescues. Aizawa's lips twitched in faint amusement. Let's not ruin the surprise, he said dryly. All Might stepped forward, his booming voice drawing everyone's attention. Young Midoriya, young Yaoyorozu. The two students immediately straightened, their expressions attentive. Since you're both the class representatives, you'll lead your classmates through this exercise, All Might declared, his tone firm yet encouraging. If your class struggles, it will reflect on your leadership. The weight of success or failure rests on your shoulders. Midoriya's face lit with nervous determination. Why yes, sir, we'll do our best. Momo gave a confident nod. Understood. We'll ensure the class works together efficiently. That's the spirit, All Might said, giving them a thumbs up. Now, time for you all to perform your exercise. Time skip. Todoroki stood at the edge of the dam in the mock city, his breath visible in the frigid air. The roar of rushing water echoed around him, a deafening reminder of the imminent danger. The dam groaned under the relentless pressure, cracks spider webbing across its surface as torrents of water threatened to break through. His left hand hovered in front of him, frost swirling and forming into dense layers of ice that reinforced the dam's structure. Yet, for every crack he sealed, another seemed to appear. The weight of the water surged, each tremor vibrating through the ground beneath his feet. Momo, report. Todoroki's voice crackled through her earpiece, his tone calm despite the chaos unfolding. Momo adjusted her binoculars, watching from her elevated position. The water level is still rising. How's the dam holding? Todoroki braced himself, creating massive glaciers of ice to reinforce the dam. His right hand ignited briefly, steam hissing as he balanced the cold with controlled bursts of heat to prevent frostbite. It's holding for now, but I can't guarantee it'll last much longer. Meanwhile, Tenya shot across the streets with his engine-powered legs, ferrying mock civilians to designated safe zones. He zipped through the city in a blur. Keep moving, he commanded, his authoritative tone urging the group onward. From below, Zero launched tape from his elbows, snagging a cluster of mock civilians Tenya had guided to safety. Got him, Zero shouted, using his tape to hoist them onto a nearby rooftop. On another rooftop, Suyu crouched low, her rain-soaked hair clinging to her face. Ribbit, Sato, we're ready, she called. Below her, Sato grunted as he pulled a makeshift pulley system Momo had created. The pulley lifted a platform carrying a group of mock civilian children and elderly figures. Hold tight, Sato warned as the winds howled around them. Ditto clones darted across the scene, multiplying rapidly as they leapt from building to building. Each clone carried a mock civilian in its arms, passing them off to classmates waiting on safer ground. Keep up the pace, one Ditto called to another before vanishing into another leap. Dark shadow surged through the air, guided by Tokiyami's steady commands. The shadowy figure enveloped groups of mock civilians, gently lowering them onto rooftops. You're safe now, Tokiyami murmured, his eyes sharp as he surveyed the scene. Good work, everyone, Momo encouraged from her vantage point. She quickly created another pulley cart from her quirk, dropping it to the ground below. Use this to transport the remaining groups. Juro, stationed nearby, used her sonic waves to warn everyone. Move it. The water's rising too fast to waste time. She shouted, her voice echoed throughout. From another rooftop, Mina coordinated with Kirishima, the two working to clear debris that blocked evacuation routes. I'll melt this, Mina said, acid dripping from her hands as she dissolved a fallen beam. Nice one, Amina acid. Kirishima grinned, slamming his hardened fists through a chunk of rubble. Keep the path clear, and we'll get everyone out of here. Above the chaos, Yaoyorozu's voice came through the comms again. Todoroki, status update. The ice is holding, but barely, Todoroki responded, his breaths labored. Another deafening crack echoed as he slammed his palm down, reinforcing the dam with another massive layer of ice. I'll hold it as long as I can just focus on evacuations. Despite the storm's ferocity, Class 1A worked like a well-oiled machine, each student using their unique abilities to save as many lives as possible. 13 folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the students below. They've certainly improved, she remarked. All Might nodded, a proud smile on his face. They're working in unison, that's for sure. Young Yaoyorozu and Midoriya are leading the class like a finely tuned machine. Mostly Yaoyorozu, Aizawa interjected, his tone even. Her quirk is far more effective when she has a team to support and guide. I'll make sure to include that in my report to Hound Dog. She can't be as active in rescue exercises as Midoriya, and her leadership skills is shining. With the knowledge they've accumulated and the growth they've shown, they need to start discussing their futures as heroes seriously. Midnight nodded in agreement. Oh, right, they'll have the annual Heroics Career Guidance coming up soon, she said as she gave a sultry grin. And we've got a couple of special lessons planned to prepare them. All Might chuckled but then turned his gaze to Bakugo, who sat on the sidelines, his arms crossed and his face twisted in a dark scowl. This will be one step in their heroics careers, but it's clear some students are struggling with this teamwork dynamic. Bakugo's eyes burned with fury, his foot tapping impatiently against the ground. His clenched fists occasionally sparked with tiny explosions, though he made no move to stand. Being suspended from the exercise stung worse than any injury. Watching his classmates succeed without him, following orders and pulling off rescues with ease, was like a slap to the face. TCH, he hissed, his voice low but dripping with venom. His teeth clenched tightly as he glared at Todoroki's ice holding the dam steady. Idiots, if they think they're better without me, they're dead wrong. After several tense minutes, the last of the mock civilians had been successfully evacuated. Momo scanned the area with her binoculars, ensuring no one had been left behind. She pressed a finger to her comms. Izuku, is that everyone? She asked, her voice calm but commanding. A Ditto hopped onto a nearby rooftop, electricity from a passing storm crackling in the air as the clone high-fived its original. Yep, we've got them all, Ditto said with a wide grin. Suyu landed gracefully beside him, her expression neutral. Though a few fell during the rescue and didn't make it, she said bluntly, her voice cutting through the comms like a cold breeze. Ochako's face turned scarlet, her hands wringing nervously. Sorry, everyone. I tried. Ditto placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his smile warm. Hey, it's okay, Ochako. It happens. No one's perfect. Ribbit, but it kinda is someone's fault, Suyu added flatly, earning a sheepish laugh from Ochako and a few others over the comms. The other Dittos stationed across the mock city flashed thumbs-ups, each surrounded by their classmates and the rescued mock civilians on the rooftops. The unified display of success was almost enough to ease the tension in the air. Good work, everyone, Ditto shouted confidently, his voice echoing across the cityscape. Momo gave a firm nod and switched channels. Todoroki, you can release the dam now. Standing atop the cracking dam, Todoroki exhaled a frosty breath. He gave a slight nod to himself before stopping his ice production. With a sharp burst of his quirk, he formed a towering ice ramp and raced up its slick surface, launching himself toward a nearby rooftop. The dam groaned under its own weight, the cracked spider webbing rapidly across its surface. Then, boom! The dam shattered in a deafening explosion, sending chunks of concrete and ice flying in every direction. Whoosh! A massive torrent of water surged forward, crashing through the streets of the mock city like a relentless tidal wave. The ground trembled beneath the sheer force of the flood, and the air filled with the deep, rumbling roar of rushing water. Buildings quaked, and debris was swept away as the water swallowed everything in its path. From her vantage point, Momo shielded her eyes from the spray. Hold on. ... As the water finally began to settle, the mock city lay submerged under a glistening sheet of water, reflecting the faint light breaking through the rain clouds. Everyone panted atop the buildings, their soaked uniforms clinging to their skin, mock civilians safely in tow. These rescue exercises are getting more extreme every day, Kyoka muttered, brushing her dripping bangs out of her eyes. Tell me about it, Shiro groaned, flexing his sore arms. Kirishima chuckled, wiping water from his face. Still, things went pretty smoothly without Bakugo around, huh? Think we might get lucky and he'll stay suspended for a month? Kyoka asked, her tone dripping with sarcastic hope. I wouldn't count on it, Ditto muttered, crossing his stubby arms. I'm never that lucky. Kyoka rolled her eyes but smirked as she walked over. She gave his shoulder a light pat before casually snaking a jack around him, pulling him closer. Don't stress it, Greenie. The guy's a walking explosion with anger issues. No one expects him to play nice. Ditto's face flushed red in embarrassment, his multiple expressions flickering awkwardly. Kirishima stretched, cracking his knuckles as he joined in. Yeah, that guy's stubborn. But we just gotta work around it, especially with that big rescue test coming up. Don't want a repeat of the mess from a few weeks ago. Before Ditto could respond, a loud horn blared across the city, signaling the end of the exercise. The water began to drain from the mock streets, leaving behind soaked buildings and scattered debris. I need to find a way to get Bakugo to cooperate, Ditto thought, his frustration evident as he furrowed his brow. As class rep, I can't force him to work with us, and especially not with me. Threats won't work on him either. His expression darkened with frustration before he sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. I'll figure it out, somehow. The students returned to the classroom after a thorough review from the teachers. My hair always gets so puffy and ruffled when it's wet, Mina complained, shaking out her now wildly fluffy hair. It's like a giant pink cloud. Kyoka smirked. You look like you got electrocuted by Kaminari. Hey, Kaminari protested, though he chuckled. I'd say it suits you. If I ever drown, Mineta chimed in with a sleazy grin, I wanna get CPR from a chick. Hot, heavy, deep enough to take my breath away. Shiro groaned. Wouldn't that defeat the purpose, idiot? Toru, meanwhile, blushed faintly as she glanced at Izuku. When their eyes met, Izuku's face turned bright red, and he nearly stumbled over his desk. I wouldn't mind getting CPR from a certain someone, she murmured shyly. Izuku's brain short-circuited, his expression a mix of panic and embarrassment. What? See, Hagakure gets it, Mineta said, jabbing a finger at her in triumph. Getting mouth-to-mouth from a love-struck maiden while they save your life, it's poetic. He wore a blissful, lecherous look. Momo crossed her arms, her voice sharp. Please refrain from encouraging his inappropriate fantasies, Hagakure. Sorry, Yaoyorozu, Toru mumbled, her face still bright red. Before anyone else could chime in, Aizawa entered the classroom, his usual sleep-deprived glare silencing the room. Everyone immediately straightened in their seats. Good work today, Aizawa said, his tone even. Now, moving on, we have a few announcements to cover. The students perked up, curious. First, Aizawa continued, this week, we'll be holding mandatory heroics career guidance counseling sessions. There was a murmur of excitement and intrigue. You'll each have a one-on-one session with Hound Dog to discuss your future as heroes, Aizawa explained. He gestured for Mineta to speak as the latter raised his hand. Sensei, what exactly will Hound Dog be helping us with? Mineta asked. Is it just the usual stuff about heroics and career guidance? Not exactly, Aizawa replied. You've all had a taste of the hero world through internships and combat exercises. You've seen the dangers, the villains, and the demands of the job. But there's more to being a hero than just fighting and rescuing. His gaze swept across the room. This counseling will help you reflect on what kind of hero you want to become. Do you want to specialize in rescue operations, like 13? Or maybe you see yourself as a pro sidekick working under an agency. Perhaps you want to be an international hero, or even an underground hero like myself. The room was silent, students hanging on his every word. Think about why you came to UA in the first place, Aizawa concluded. Hound Dog will help you figure out how to align your goals with your future as a professional hero. Take it seriously. Hiroshima nodded firmly. Sounds manly. I'm all in. Ochako smiled softly. It'll be nice to really think about where we're heading. Ribbit. This will help us see if our priorities match our aspirations, Tsuyu said, tilting her head thoughtfully. Good, Aizawa said, already pulling out the next set of papers. The second announcement. We'll be having Parents' Day next week. The classroom erupted into a mix of groans, excited whispers, and startled exclamations. Parents' Day, Mina said, wide-eyed. I thought only general studies had to deal with that kind of stuff. Even the hero course has to do normal school events. Hiroshima yelped, his face a mix of shock and nervous laughter. Aizawa raised a hand, silencing the chatter. Yes, even the hero course, he said dryly. Make sure your parents or guardians receive this notice. He held up the papers. On Parents' Day, your parents or guardians will have the chance to watch you in action. You'll be participating in a mixed exercise involving both combat and rescue scenarios. The students exchanged uncertain glances. It's a chance for them to see the progress you've made, Aizawa continued, his tone firm. Before the demonstrations, there will be a brief tour of the campus to familiarize them with UA's facilities. Wait, combat training in front of our parents. Kaminari gulped. What if I mess up? Then don't mess up, Kyoka said bluntly, smirking. Izuku's eyes widened with both excitement and anxiety. I guess this is a good opportunity to show them how far we've come. Ribbit. I hope my siblings can come, too, Tsuyu said quietly, her gaze thoughtful. Man, I can't wait to show my mom how hard I've been working. Hiroshima said, pumping a fist in determination. Don't forget, Aizawa added, his voice cutting through the chatter, this isn't just for show. It's a real exercise, and I'll expect you to treat it with the same seriousness as any other training. You're dismissed. The students stood, buzzing with both excitement and nervous energy as they filed out of the classroom. Kyoka groaned, rolling her eyes as she slouched her shoulders. Ugh, Parents' Day is the worst, she muttered, walking alongside Momo, Ochako, Iida, Izuku, Toru, Mina, Tsuyu, and Todoroki. Tell me about it, Mina sighed, her voice tinged with frustration. My parents can be so embarrassing sometimes. Kyoka sighed, her earlobe jacks twitching as she imagined the nightmare that awaited her. At least your dad won't act like a total idiot the whole time. She could already picture her dad grilling Izuku if he ever found out they worked closely together. He'd probably give some awkward lecture or, worse, act like he was scaring him off. Just imagining it made her face flush crimson, and she looked away hurriedly before anyone could notice. Why does it have to be so easy for them to embarrass me? I'm certainly excited for it, Tenya interjected proudly. I want my mother to see just how far I've come. As the future of Ingenium, I must show them I'm worthy of carrying on the legacy. His tone was full of determination. Oh, so both of your parents are coming? Ochako asked curiously. No, just my mother, Tenya clarified. My father is occupied with work, unfortunately. What about you, Uraraka? He added, turning to Ochako. Ochako beamed, her face lighting up. Both my parents, hopefully. I'm really excited. They've supported me so much in becoming a hero, and I want to show them how much that means to me. Tsuyu gave a small nod. Ribbit, my parents are usually pretty busy, so I'm hoping they can make it this time. Her voice had a note of hope in it. Really, Tsu? Izuku asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Yep, Tsuyu replied with a small shrug. They've always had a lot of work, so they couldn't come to my parents' day back in middle school either. Momo smiled warmly, clasping her hands in front of her. I'm quite excited about Parents' Day. It will be a chance for my parents to see how much I've grown since coming to UA. Her smile faltered, and a faint blush dusted her cheeks. Though, knowing my father, he'll probably arrive in a helicopter or some other grandiose display. A few of the others chuckled at that, while Ochako's eyes widened in disbelief. What is your life? She exclaimed, blinking in surprise at the casual way Momo mentioned her father's extravagant arrivals. I can't even imagine that kind of thing, Mina added, shaking her head. My parents are barely on time to anything. What about you, Todoroki? Izuku asked, glancing at his stoic classmate to change the subject. Todoroki's expression remained as cool as ever. Me, probably no one, he replied nonchalantly, his tone indifferent. Izuku's face paled slightly as he quickly realized what he had said. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, he stammered, feeling awkward. Iida, ever the conscientious one, quickly added, ah, yes. Your mother is in the hospital. My apologies for bringing it up. Wait, really? Toru's voice was uncharacteristically soft as she spoke. Oh, I'm sorry, Todoroki. Todoroki shrugged off their concern with practiced ease, his voice as even as ever. Don't worry about it, nothing worth apologizing over. Iida nodded fervently, determination evident in his tone. I'm certain your parents would be delighted to see how far you've come, Todoroki. It's a shame they can't attend. Momo offered a reassuring smile. I'm sure both of your parents would be proud. You're second in our class when it comes to the practical portion of training. Suyu chimed in with her usual blunt honesty. Ribbit, it's true, you're impressive. Todoroki glanced at them briefly before looking ahead. It's fine, really. Besides, the last thing I want is that bastard showing up, he said, his voice suddenly colder, venom seeping into his tone. Iida frowned slightly. I still wonder why you insist on referring to him as bastard. Todoroki didn't hesitate. Because he's a bastard, he replied, deadpan. Mina leaned closer, her curiosity getting the better of her. Wait, does that mean, like, in a literal sense? She asked with a mischievous grin. Todoroki shrugged. Take it however you want, he replied, his voice dismissive as the conversation shifted to lighter topics. As the group continued their conversation about Parents' Day, Izuku's thoughts began to wander. He couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and anxiety about his mother attending the event. Mom will be coming. I really hope she doesn't end up showing my baby pictures to everyone, he thought, a nervous sweat forming on his brow. The memory of past parent-teacher meetings at Aldera Junior High surfaced in his mind. Those meetings were often disheartening, with teachers giving vague, dismissive comments about his progress. This will be the first time Mom attends a meeting where the teachers actually care about my development, he mused, a small smile tugging at his lips. His thoughts then drifted to his father, a figure who had been absent for most of his life. I kind of wish Dad could be here. But then he remembered the presence he felt within One for All, the flicker of his father's essence intertwined with the quirk. In a way, he's been watching over me since I inherited One for All, Izuku realized, feeling a warmth in his chest. However, a sudden and embarrassing thought struck him. Wait, if Dad's presence is within One for All, does that mean he's seen everything I've done? Like when His face flushed a deep crimson, and he slapped his hands over his ears, desperately trying to halt the train of thought. Nope, not going down that rabbit hole. His abrupt reaction caught the attention of his friends. They turned to him with puzzled expressions, unsure of what had caused his sudden outburst. Izuku, Momo asked, her brow furrowed in bewilderment. Realizing he had drawn attention to himself, Izuku quickly lowered his hands and forced a nervous laugh. Sorry, just lost in thought, he said, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. The group exchanged glances but decided not to press further. Anyway, Ribbit, Suyu said, her eyes flicking toward the group. Let's change the subject, yeah. What do you think the upcoming rescue exercise is going to be like? Oh, right, Toru chimed in, her voice upbeat. Aizawa didn't exactly give us any clues, did he? Kyoka rolled her eyes. 1,000 yen says it's crazy dangerous. Aizawa wouldn't make it easy on us. I'm betting it'll be way tougher than that flood exercise we did before. Todoroki nodded thoughtfully, his usual calm expression in place. Yeah, we've already done something similar, and, honestly, the first time was a disaster. If they repeat that, I don't think it'll really benefit us. We've learned enough from it. It'll probably be a disaster, something like the flooding, just as intense, Ochako said, her voice chipper but tinged with concern. So we should be expecting a natural disaster. Maybe an earthquake, hurricane, or even a volcano erupting. She added, her hands animated as she spoke. Kyoka raised an eyebrow. Where would they get the budget for a volcano? Actually, never mind, she said with a roll of her eyes. Let's not tempt fate. Iida adjusted his glasses, his usual seriousness taking over. Yes, but I'm more concerned with another factor, he said, his voice lowering slightly. You all recall how we failed the last practical, right? Izuku's shoulders slumped at the mention of the previous test. Everyone's gaze turned to him with concerned expressions. Momo and Kyoka's faces contorted into one of mild annoyance as Bakugo's name came to everyone's mind. Momo sighed deeply, clearly frustrated. Honestly, how are we supposed to work with someone so volatile, egotistical, and trigger-happy? She muttered, clenching her fists in frustration. Her tone showed a rare burst of anger. And his quirk, Ochako continued, shaking her head. It's the most dangerous. He could easily make a natural disaster in a city even worse. Let's not forget, Tsuyu added bluntly, if we fail or succeed, it's on the class as a whole. Toru snorted. Great, so our grade depends on Bakugo actually working with us. She said, a sarcastic edge to her tone. Well, there goes my perfect grade. Mina folded her arms, looking exasperated. How do they expect us to work with him? Izuku spoke up, trying to defend his classmate in his usual way. Well, he only acts like that when I'm involved, Izuku said, pointing out how Bakugo's temper was often specifically triggered by him. He gets angry and refuses to work with me as the leader. Momo gave him a sympathetic look. Izuku, that's not exactly your fault, she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. The unexpected contact sent a brief spark of electricity between them, and Momo quickly pulled her hand away. Both of them turned crimson as the brief moment lingered. I'm fine, Momo, Izuku said, his face slightly flushed as he looked away. I'm the class representative, so I'll have to find a way to make Bakugo work with me and the rest of the class. He clenched his fists, the frustration evident in his eyes. It's just, working with Bakugo is somehow more taxing than fighting the Nomu or the entire USJ, he muttered, gritting his teeth. Next day, Izuku Midoriya sat in the surprisingly comfortable chair in front of Hound Dog's desk. The room resembled a psychologist's office more than a school guidance counselor's office, with its warm lighting and inviting atmosphere. Hound Dog, the hero known for his canine features, had removed his muzzle, revealing his sharp eyes and attentive expression. He was pulling up Izuku's file on his computer. All right, let's start, Hound Dog said with a polite grin, his voice carrying a hint of a growl. I imagine you've had quite the experience at UA, certainly far more different and exciting than any first year. Izuku gave a sheepish laugh, his face flushing slightly. Yeah, exciting, he said, recalling everything that had happened at UA. His hands fidgeted nervously in his lap. Hound Dog nodded grimly in understanding. Your classmates have certainly gone through an ordeal. I can't disclose our sessions, but I can say they are doing better, he said. Izuku felt a sense of relief. Now, we should begin your heroics guidance counseling. I feel honored, Hound Dog Sensei, Izuku said, his voice respectful as Hound Dog nodded and continued to scan through Izuku's file. You've certainly made waves through UA, Midoriya. You've gained far more practical experience than most first years, Hound Dog said with a thoughtful growl. Before we dive in, let's break this down. There are 3 broad categories in heroics: combat, support, and rescue. Combat heroes focus on taking down villains and ensuring security for events and VIPs. Hound Dog leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Your performance during the Capture the Flag exercise is a prime example. Outnumbered, you managed to hold off both Class 1A and 1B, defending your position with impressive strategy and control. He paused for a moment, watching Izuku carefully. You definitely stand out in terms of combat experience, he continued. Not only do you have the best combat report among your peers, but your ability to read the battlefield and make critical decisions under pressure is a rare skill. That, combined with your unwavering determination, will make you an exceptional combat hero. Izuku felt a surge of pride at Hound Dog's words. Rescue heroes focus on handling a wide range of situations: natural disasters, fires, floods, rescuing cats stuck in trees, and much more, Hound Dog explained, his voice taking on a deep, serious tone. With the Omnitrix and your quirk, you'd be a great fit as a rescue hero. You'd likely be able to adapt to any kind of disaster scenario without breaking a sweat. Izuku nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the weight of Hound Dog's words. Hound Dog continued, his gaze narrowing slightly. Then there's the category of support heroes. These heroes work behind the scenes, tracking down villains, gathering intel, performing investigations, offering counseling, and even transporting criminals to prisons. It's not as glamorous as combat, but just as essential. Izuku nodded again, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. With the Omnitrix, I think I could fit into any category without much hassle. So, I'd need to choose one focus area, right? Hound Dog grunted in affirmation. Not necessarily, but keep in mind, these categories are just loose frameworks. Some heroes, like you, can fit into multiple roles. Take me, for example. I'm primarily a combat hero, but I also serve as a support hero. I take part in manhunts, search and rescue missions, and a variety of support tasks. Then you have others, like 13, who focus purely on rescue work. He leaned forward slightly, his expression hardening with intensity. The key thing is, you don't have to confine yourself to a single slot. Heroes often adapt to the situation at hand, and that flexibility could be your biggest strength. Izuku looked down, considering the path ahead. Hound Dog's words lingered in his mind. Do you have any idea what you want to do as a hero? It's fine if you don't have a solid idea yet, Hound Dog said, his gravelly voice carrying an encouraging tone. Izuku scratched the back of his head nervously, his green eyes darting away. Well, I wanted to be like All Might, but now I'm not so sure, he admitted. Hound Dog tilted his head, his ears twitching slightly as he gestured for Izuku to elaborate. I mean, I still want to be like All Might, Izuku continued, his voice more contemplative. But I also want to be my own hero. I want to at least do the kind of work he does, helping as many people as possible. Hound Dog nodded slowly, his sharp eyes locking onto Izuku. That's a common sentiment. A lot of students come here wanting to emulate All Might. But for you, he leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. I wouldn't recommend trying to copy him. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise. What? Why not? All Might is an incredible hero. That's undeniable, Hound Dog said, his growl tinged with respect. But he's not without his limits. For example, All Might isn't particularly skilled at tracking villains or locating missing persons. His strength is in overwhelming power and charisma, but there's more to hero work than that. He leaned back slightly, his gaze softening. You, Midoriya, can do a lot of what All Might does and more. You have unique abilities that give you flexibility All Might didn't have. I'd advise you to think beyond what you think a hero should be and explore what you can bring to the table. Izuku blinked, his mind racing. I never thought of it like that, he said softly, his face lighting up with realization. He nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. Hound Dog's lips curled into a subtle grin. Good. Now, tell me, do you plan on getting an international hero license like All Might? Izuku hesitated, tilting his head in thought. I haven't really thought about it much. I guess I'd want to establish myself in Japan first. Once I've proven myself here, maybe I could go for an international license. But, he scratched his cheek sheepishly. It's not something I've given serious thought to yet. Hound Dog chuckled, his deep voice rumbling. Fair enough. Just know that getting an international license is no small feat. If you think earning a license in Japan is tough, an international license is even more demanding. You'd be facing all kinds of challenges, different laws, cultures, and hero systems. It's worth considering down the line, but focus on the here and now for now. Izuku gulped but nodded firmly. I understand. I'll work hard to be ready for that someday. Hound Dog leaned forward again, his eyes narrowing slightly. What about sidekicks? Do you plan on having a team or any sidekicks when you go pro? Izuku froze, the question catching him off guard. He fidgeted awkwardly. I haven't really thought about having a team or sidekicks, he admitted. Hound Dog let out a low growl of amusement. You're not alone there. Most first years haven't. It's something to start thinking about, though. A good team can make all the difference, especially for someone with your skill set. Izuku nodded slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. Alright, how about this? How do you plan to market yourself as a pro hero? Hound Dog asked. Market myself, Izuku repeated, confused. As in how you'll present yourself to the public, Hound Dog clarified. What image will you project? What kind of hero do you want people to see when they look at you? Izuku blinked, completely at a loss. I don't know. I've only ever thought about helping people like All Might did, he said, his voice tinged with embarrassment. Hound Dog gave an understanding nod. That tracks. You were quirkless before last year, right? It makes sense you haven't had much time to think about the bigger picture sidekicks, teams, branding. You've been focused on helping people, and that's admirable. But as a pro, these are things you'll need to figure out. Izuku flushed slightly, feeling a mix of embarrassment and determination. He realized he hadn't considered so many aspects of hero work beyond just saving people. Sidekicks, branding, team dynamics. It was overwhelming, but he was eager to tackle it all. Hound Dog stood, his towering frame commanding the room. Why don't you take some time to think about these things? Reflect on what kind of hero you want to be. For now, you're dismissed. Izuku stood and bowed deeply. Thank you, Hound Dog Sensei. I'll think hard about everything you said. Hound Dog watched him leave, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Class 1A buzzed with conversation as students discussed their recent sessions with Hound Dog. He told me I need to work on my focus during combat, Denki Kaminari said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Makes sense, Jiro Kyoka replied, smirking. You do have a tendency to short-circuit. Kaminari slumped, but rescuing seems to not be in the cards for me. He suggested I improve my speed to complement my strength, Eijiro Kirishima said, clenching his fist. I'm definitely aiming to be a combat hero, so I'll work on my speed. Hound Dog Sensei advised me to enhance my observational skills during rescue missions, Tsuyu Asui mentioned thoughtfully. Though besides that I'm doing pretty well. So, you're still aiming to be a rescue hero? Izuku inquired. Tsuyu nodded, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Yes, Ribbit, rescuing people from floods and hurricanes is one of the reasons I want to be a hero. She glanced at Izuku, her blush deepening slightly. What about you, Izuku-chan? Do you plan on having a hero team or something like that? Before Izuku could respond, Mina Ishido bounced over, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ooh, if we go pro, we should totally team up sometimes. Just think about it, Amina Acid and Dekiru 10, the ultimate alien duo. Mina's enthusiasm was infectious, and she playfully nudged Izuku. We'd make an awesome team, don't you think? Izuku chuckled, scratching the back of his head. Yeah, that sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Though I wouldn't mind teaming up either, Ribbit, Tsuyu said, her tone as straightforward as ever. Her mind flashed back to the Ghost Freak incident, the moment she thought she might lose him. She clenched her hands slightly at her sides, her heart aching with a longing she didn't know how to express. Still, she spoke with her usual bluntness, letting her feelings slip through her words. Plus, I want to be close to you. Izuku's head snapped toward her, his face a bright crimson. Really? Tsuyu nodded, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. You're important to me, Ribbit, she said softly, her heart racing. So, being on a team together would be nice. Plus, I can make sure you don't get yourself into too much trouble. Izuku slumped slightly, already imagining the scenarios where he'd somehow stumble into chaos. Kyoka let out a short laugh, crossing her arms. Trouble's basically your middle name. You've faced stuff that makes top pro heroes lose sleep, and we're still in high school, she teased. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she masked it with her usual snark. I guess someone has to keep you in line. Otherwise, you'll probably end up doing something stupid or getting yourself hurt. A faint flush dusted her cheeks as she looked away. Momo cleared her throat, stepping forward with a composed demeanor that barely masked the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. I wouldn't mind working alongside you either, she said, her voice calm but earnest. Her hands clasped in front of her as she tried to project her usual elegance, though a faint blush betrayed her emotions. Teamwork is a cornerstone of hero work, after all. Supporting and relying on each other is only natural. Toru, partially visible now, fidgeted slightly. Her heart pounded as she glanced at Izuku, her recent confession still fresh in her mind. Yep, someone's gotta have your back, right? She said, her cheery voice masking the nervous flutter in her chest. I mean, we'd be unstoppable as a team. Mina nudged Izuku playfully, her lilac blush spreading further. And can you even imagine the insane combo moves we could come up with? Come on, Dekiru, you know sticking together is the way to go. She grinned brightly, but her heart raced as she caught herself staring at him a little too long. Izuku's blush deepened as he tried to process everything, his gaze darting between the girls. I mean, having a team couldn't hurt, right? Ochako, who had been standing nearby, perked up at the conversation. Her eyes lit up as she stepped closer, her usual cheerful energy returning. Yeah, we could totally kick alien butt together, she said, pumping her fist in excitement. Her tone softened slightly, and she tilted her head. Oh, by the way, did Hound Dog give you any advice about how you're gonna market yourself as a hero? Without realizing it, Ochako had moved closer to Izuku, and so had the other girls. Izuku blinked, his face turning a deep red as he noticed how close they all were. Ochako suddenly realized the proximity and jumped back, her cheeks burning. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so close, she stammered, looking down at her hands nervously. I just got a little carried away. Izuku glanced at her, his heart racing. It's okay, he said quickly, his voice barely above a whisper as he avoided eye contact, completely overwhelmed by the attention. Izuku then noticed the girls' flushed embarrassed looks. He raised an eyebrow. He didn't really notice, but the girls had been sticking close to him lately. He didn't really pay too much mind before what Toru had said rang in his mind. Oh yeah, what did she mean by other girls? Izuku asked, glancing at Toru before they heard footsteps and quickly rushed back to the seats. Aizawa rolled his shoulders as he entered the classroom, his expression as stoic as ever. Morning. I take it you've all had your student evaluations with Hound Dog by now, he said in his usual monotone. Good, with that out of the way, you'll be moving on to Hero Informatics today. A collective groan rippled through the room, most of the students slumping in their seats. Ah, man, Kaminari groaned, his forehead meeting his desk with a thud. Hero Informatics is my worst subject. Same here, Mina chimed in, dramatically draping herself over her desk. This is gonna be torture. Even Kirishima, usually the bastion of optimism, sighed. Doesn't sound very manly to sit through a whole lesson on this kind of stuff. Aizawa's tone remained neutral as he cut through their complaints. With midnight, the shift in the room was instantaneous. Groans turned into wide-eyed excitement, the boys perking up like they'd just been jolted awake. Before anyone could speak, the classroom door swung open, and in strutted Midnight with her signature sultry grin. Hello, my darling students, she purred, her voice laced with playful dominance. Her hips swayed as she walked, her heels clicking against the floor. The boys' gazes snapped to her, some attempting to play it cool, while others, like Mineta, shamelessly gawked. At least he wasn't drooling this time. Progress, I guess. Zero leaned back in his chair, smirking. You know, maybe Hero Informatics isn't so bad after all. Tokiyami coughed into his hand, his face turning an uncharacteristic shade of pink. Ahem. Agreed. Kyoka's eye twitched as she watched the boys turn into flustered messes. Seriously, guys. I know, right, Mina whispered back, rolling her eyes. Midnight stopped at the front of the room, placing a hand on her hip as she regarded the class. My, such energy today, she said, licking her lips in an exaggeratedly playful manner that made half the boys squirm. Good, you're going to need it. Iida raised his hand with military precision. Miss Midnight, may I inquire about today's lesson? She chuckled softly, her voice dripping with amusement. Ah, Tenya, always so eager. Today's lesson is about how you present yourselves as heroes, she said, folding her arms under her chest, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. We're going to explore how you can use your appearance, behavior, and quirks to leave an impression on the public. Whether you want to stand in the spotlight or stay in the shadows, how you portray yourself matters. Wait, so, branding? Zero asked. Precisely, Midnight said, her tone turning teasing. After all, some of you, she glanced at Mineta, might already know the power of a good first impression. Being a hero is more than just saving the day, Midnight explained, her tone playful yet instructive. If you're aiming for sponsorships, brands, hair products, endorsements, and the like, then your first impression is key. It gives the public a solid idea of who you are and what kind of hero they can expect you to be. Ochako's eyes lit up at the mention of sponsorships. Sponsorships. That could mean steady money. If I can make an amazing debut, I could land a big sponsorship. Then maybe, just maybe, I can finally help Mom and Dad. Her hand shot up eagerly. Miss Midnight, how would you recommend we make a great debut to catch the attention of sponsors? Midnight blinked at the enthusiasm, then tapped her chin thoughtfully, her grin returning. That's a good question. A heroic rescue always leaves an impression, especially if it involves saving children or people in dire situations. But let me be clear, sponsorships aren't guaranteed after one good deed. Building that kind of reputation takes consistent effort, multiple rescues, and making sure you stand out. Or, Bakugo interrupted with a sharp grin, leaning back in his chair, you just blow the crap out of some villains and everyone will love you. Midnight raised an eyebrow at him. That could work, but only if you're careful not to blow up anything you're not supposed to. Sponsors don't love lawsuits, you know. Hiroshima chuckled nervously. Yeah, maybe tone it down a little, man. Saving people quickly and making sure no one gets hurt could work too, Suyu chimed in, her voice calm as she rested her chin on her hand. If you show you're reliable and caring, people might want to work with you, Ribbit. Ochako's mind raced as she absorbed the advice. Consistent effort, memorable rescues. Okay, I can do that. I just need to make sure people remember me as someone who gets things done and really cares. She clenched her fists, her determination shining through. Mineta and Kaminari exchanged mischievous grins, their expressions lighting up with a shared idea. If you really want to get a sponsorship, you could do what MT Lady did, Mineta said, snickering. Totally, Kaminari chimed in, leaning back in his chair with a grin. Just beat up some villains or save someone, then wiggle your ass a little. Boom, instantly famous. Mineta nodded eagerly. Yeah, add a little sex appeal, and sponsors will be throwing money at you. Kyoka's eye twitched as the two boys burst into laughter, their comments grating on her nerves. Her hand hovered over one of her earphone jacks, ready to jab it at the pervy pair if they didn't stop. Okay, that's enough, Midnight interrupted, holding up a hand, her voice a mix of amusement and exasperation. Sex appeal can be a factor in gaining popularity, but it's not the only thing, nor should it be the main thing. Sponsors look for reliability, charisma, and how well you connect with the public. That's far more important in the long run. Ochako shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her expression uneasy as she toyed with her hands. Sex appeal, that's what sponsors care about. But, that's not the kind of hero I want to be. She frowned, her determination faltering slightly. Kyoka crossed her arms, glaring at Kaminari and Mineta. Seriously, that's your takeaway from all this? Wiggle your ass and get famous. She muttered, her cheeks tinged red not from embarrassment, but from irritation. You guys are idiots. Midnight sighed, a playful grin returning to her lips as she continued. While it's true some heroes, like MT Lady, have leaned into their sex appeal as part of their public image, it's not for everyone. And it's not required. Plenty of successful heroes are famous for their skills, heroics, and dedication, not for flaunting themselves. Not one of them though. Kyoka muttered. Ya don't have like a dozen sponsorships deals and interviews on daily. Zero asked. Yeah, you must swimming in sponsor deals and you're the sexiest hero next to MT Lady, Mineta shouted. Well true, but I didn't even get sponsorships deals on my first debut for a very long time. Midnight said. From his sleeping bag, Aizawa's deadpan voice cut through the room. If I recall, you were involved in one of the scandals that led to stricter clothing regulations. I can imagine being in a scandal like that doesn't have sponsors lining up. Midnight stiffened, her eyes narrowing as an ominous purple aura began to emanate from her. She shot Aizawa a murderous look, her patience visibly thinning. Aizawa, ever the survivalist, pulled the edge of his sleeping bag over his face. Shutting up now, he muttered, retreating. Midnight sighed, placing her hands on her hips. To an extent, Mineta and Kaminari aren't entirely wrong. For many female pro-heroes, sex appeal can be a factor in gaining popularity. It's not as prominent for men, though there are exceptions. Kaminari perked up at the validation. Like how MT Lady basically showed off her butt in her debut. Exactly, Ciro said with a nod. Her popularity skyrocketed after that. She's only been a hero for about a year and is already projected to be in the top 20 when the hero billboard chart comes out. See, sexy heroes get all the attention. Kaminari grinned, nudging Kirishima, who looked more thoughtful. Kirishima scratched the back of his head. Yeah, but it feels kinda unmanly to rely on that, you know. Shouldn't it be more about your actions than your looks? True, but it's hard to ignore how much it works, Kaminari countered, shrugging. Ochako's face twisted into a mix of discomfort and unease. The idea of having to rely on something like showing off her ass and wiggling it for attention, especially for perverts like Mineta, made her stomach churn. Is that what it takes? Would people like me more if I? Her eyes flickered downward briefly, a pang of insecurity hitting her. Would I even be considered sexy enough for that? She clenched her fists tightly, trying to push the thought away. Her parents' smiling faces flashed in her mind, the weight of their financial struggles pressing on her chest. She wanted to help them, she had to. But the idea of doing it that way felt so wrong, so gross. Ochako suddenly slapped her cheeks lightly, forcing herself to snap out of it. Stop it, I'm not even a pro-hero yet. There's no point worrying about stuff like this. But as the conversation around her continued, the discomfort lingered in her chest. Even as she smiled and tried to focus on the lesson, the thought gnawed at her. Lunchtime. He could almost see the steam rising from her head. The group was making their way to the cafeteria, and Kyoka's mood was definitely the topic of conversation. Momo, ever the considerate friend, tried to ease the tension. Why don't we change the subject a bit? She suggested gently. How were your sessions with Hound Dog? Abara, always composed and calm, clasped her hands together with a serene expression. He provided me with some very insightful advice, she said, her voice soft but clear. Although he did warn me that my image as a Christian might attract some unintended backlash in the future. Pony, walking alongside them, slid into an empty seat at the cafeteria table, her usual energetic attitude present. Nothing too exciting for me. Once I get my license, I'll be working on getting my international one, she said with a smile. Izuku's eyes widened with interest. Wait, you're getting an international license? He asked, curious. Pony smirked playfully, emphasizing the P as she spoke. Yep, since I'm planning to head back to America, an international license could come in handy, she said confidently. Izuku felt a pang of sadness he couldn't quite explain. The realization that Pony, as an exchange student, would eventually be leaving Japan made him feel strangely melancholic. He quickly pushed the thought aside. Setsuna, who had been listening quietly, shrugged nonchalantly. The rest of us were pretty much the same old stuff, she said, her tone a little less enthusiastic. Yui spoke up thoughtfully, tapping her chin. I was recommended to be a support hero. Hound Dog said I could be helpful in operations by enlarging or shrinking equipment, things like that, she explained. What about you, Todoroki? Any plans after graduation? Yui asked in her usual calm tone, her eyes resting on him as he quietly ate his cold soba. Shoto paused mid-bite, his expression indifferent. Nothing concrete, though Hound Dog seems to think I'll inherit my father's agency. Yui tilted her head slightly. And you don't plan to? The table grew quiet. Wait, seriously, you're not? Toru asked, leaning forward in surprise. Shoto shook his head. No, I have no interest in taking over his agency. Dude, I thought that was like, The whole point, Mina said, her voice a mix of confusion and disbelief. You know, passing the torch and all that stuff. Iida adjusted his glasses, his posture straightening. It is a common tradition among hero families. I, for example, will inherit the Ingenium agency when I graduate. Yanagi, sitting quietly, finally spoke up. Doesn't that come with a lot of responsibility? Leading a team of sidekicks right out of school. Her voice was soft but carried a tinge of curiosity. It does, Iida said firmly, his eyes sparkling with determination. But as the next Ingenium, I am prepared to uphold my brother's legacy and embody his ideals. It's a responsibility I welcome with pride. Momo, who had been listening intently, nodded. Carrying on a family legacy can be both a privilege and a challenge. I understand that well. Toru leaned back with a laugh. Man, better you than me. I'd probably trip over the responsibility on day one. Abara turned to Todoroki, her serene demeanor unwavering. Why don't you want to inherit your father's agency? Carrying on Endeavor's legacy must be a great honor. Shoto's expression remained stoic, but there was a flicker of tension in his eyes. He exhaled quietly before responding. I don't want to be known as Endeavor's son. His voice was steady, but the weight of his words hung heavily in the air. I want to build my own path. I'll learn what I can from him, sure. But not to follow in his footsteps. I want to be my own hero, using my own strength. A hush fell over the group as his words sank in, a mix of surprise and quiet understanding passing between them. Itsuka leaned back, crossing her arms with a small smirk. Yeah, I can respect that. Carving your own path, makes sense. Wow, that was emotional, Yui said, her monotone voice and blank expression giving no hint of sarcasm or genuine sentiment. Todoroki raised an eyebrow, his face as unreadable as ever. It was, thanks. Yui nodded, her expression unchanged, as if their exchange made perfect sense. The rest of the group stared, their confusion palpable as they tried to process the interaction. Wait, did they just have a moment? Toru whispered to Mina. How can you tell? Mina replied, squinting at their stoic faces. Are they speaking telepathically or something? Ochako added, tilting her head. Momo sighed, placing a hand on her temple. I think they're just on the same wavelength. The group shared a laugh, Izuku chuckling softly, when his danger sense suddenly flared just enough to make him glance toward the cafeteria doors. His eyebrows rose as Mei Hatsume strolled in, a brown bag slung over her shoulder and her body still smeared with grease and oil. In her arms was what looked like the head of a robot, wires sticking out haphazardly. For some reason, danger sense seemed to focus on that robot head, but Izuku couldn't figure out why. Mei scanned the cafeteria, her eyes darting from table to table until they landed on him. Her face lit up like a light bulb, her grin so wide it seemed to stretch ear to ear. Without hesitation, she marched straight toward him, practically vibrating with energy. Midoriya, Hatsume's voice rang out as she stopped abruptly in front of their table, beaming. Hatsume, Izuku stammered as the girls of Class A immediately bristled, their eyes narrowing. It was no secret that Mei had zero concept of personal space, particularly with Izuku. And the fact she got along with him didn't exactly help. You guys okay? Itsuka asked cautiously, glancing around. Yui crossed her arms, her voice flat but tinged with suspicion. You seem more possessive than usual. Before anyone could answer, Mei plopped the robot head onto the table with a loud thud, drawing everyone's attention. Look what I brought, she announced proudly, already moving to the next step in her plan. Izuku barely had time to process the situation before Mei, with zero hesitation, spun around and plopped herself directly onto his lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Izuku squeaked, his entire face turning red. Chorused the girls, their voices ranging from disbelief to outrage. Their collective shout drew stares from nearby tables as every girl's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. Ochako's face turned crimson, her lips quivering as she tried to form words. Kyoka's earphone jacks whipped around like angry tails, while Yui's eye twitched violently. Itsuka's eyes went wide, and Abara gasped, her hands clasped tightly together in indignation. Yanagi's normally calm demeanor cracked slightly, her eyes widening in surprise. She just sat on his lap, Pony murmured, her tone somewhere between disbelief and growing envy. Meanwhile, Todoroki and Iida, already accustomed to bizarre situations involving Izuku, calmly took their seats. Shoto casually picked up his chopsticks and resumed eating his soba. This should be interesting, he remarked, his tone as indifferent as ever. Agreed, Iida added, adjusting his glasses. The rest of the girls, however, were less composed. What are you doing? Several of them shouted in unison. Abara stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Have you no concept of personal boundaries, you shameless woman? She demanded, her righteous indignation practically radiating off her. Itsuka's hands curled into fists as her lips twitched in frustration. Why does the guy the first like keep ending up in situations like this? Momo, always trying to maintain some sense of decorum, bristled visibly. Hatsume, please get off Izuku. We're in public, have some decency. Ochako, meanwhile, felt her heart ache as she watched Mei make herself at home on Izuku's lap, her face burning as jealousy bubbled under the surface. Mei, utterly unbothered, shifted slightly and tapped her chin thoughtfully. His thighs are sturdier than I expected. Perfect for supporting weight, must be all the training he does. She smiled brightly, clearly pleased with her observation. That comment sent the group into chaos. Momo's cheeks flushed a deep crimson as her composure began to crack. Kanoko's mushroom cap-like hair seemed to puff slightly as her face turned a vibrant red, and Yanagi averted her gaze, startled by just how much the scene unsettled her. Hatsume, please get off him, Momo repeated, her voice tightening with suppressed frustration. Mei tilted her head as if genuinely confused. Why, does he have a girlfriend? She asked, her tone clinical and straightforward, like she was running diagnostics on a machine. The group blinked in unison, thrown off by the blunt question. No, Todoroki answered casually, his eyes still on his soba. Is he interested in anyone? Mei pressed, her eyes narrowing slightly, her tone all business now. Not sure, Todoroki replied, shrugging as if it weren't a big deal. Well, there you go, Mei said, her voice brimming with certainty. She crossed her arms as if she'd just solved a particularly tricky problem. If Midoriya isn't in a romantic relationship, nor has he explicitly declared interest in anyone, then logically, there's no reason why I can't sit here. Social norms aside, this is a completely neutral action, one that doesn't violate any implicit or explicit boundaries. Right, Midoriya. Izuku had, unfortunately, fallen unconscious the moment Mei plopped onto his lap. His eyes had rolled back, mouth agape, and a faint line of foam formed at the corners of his lips. See, Mei said, utterly unfazed, her grin widening as she gestured at him. If he had an issue, he'd say something. But since he hasn't, it's clear he doesn't mind. Which means there's no problem here. The girls bristled, their collective aura of anger and jealousy wrapping around the table like a smothering blanket. That's because he's unconscious, you shameless woman. Abara snapped, her tone indignant and laced with righteous fury as she pointed accusingly at Mei. Setsuna, her eye twitching, couldn't look away. Her heart thudded in her chest as she watched Mei casually straddled to get comfortable while tinkering with the robot head in her hands. Ooh, so the stabilizer's torque is perfectly aligned with the core axis to minimize drag, Mei said to herself, entirely oblivious to the chaos she was causing. What kind of shameless nonsense is this? Toru cried, flailing her arms in disbelief. You can't just do that, especially not to Midori. How can you even be this bold? Pony's ears twitched as her face turned bright red. This isn't okay. Kanoko's face was entirely crimson, her mushroom-shaped hair puffing. Shroom. I can't watch this. She squeaked, hiding her face in her hands. Meanwhile, Setsuna groaned, unable to take it any longer. Dispatching one of her hands, she let it float across the table and delivered a sharp slap to Izuku's cheek. Wake up, Midoriya, she snapped, her voice tinged with frustration. The slap jolted Izuku awake, his eyes snapping open as he gasped, disoriented. What happened? He sputtered, his face bright red as he realized Mei was still perched on his lap. Oh, good, you're awake, Mei said cheerfully, beaming up at him. I was just telling everyone how your lap is a perfect seat, really sturdy. You've got amazing muscle density, by the way. Izuku's brain short-circuited, his face heating up as he stammered incoherently. Hatsume, what are you doing? Izuku sputtered, his voice rising in pitch. Mei, completely unbothered, adjusted herself on his lap, her casual straddle sending a visible twitch through nearly every girl at the table. Oh, hi, Midoriya. Mei chirped, grinning ear to ear. I was wondering if you're free after school today. Izuku blinked, his blush deepening as he became acutely aware of the situation. Her weight on his lap and the casual tone of her question made his mind race. Hatsume, why are you sitting on my lap? He managed to squeak. Mei tilted her head as if his question was the oddest thing she'd heard all day. Oh, because it's comfortable. And anyway, there weren't any other seats open, she explained nonchalantly, gesturing vaguely around. Plus, I wanted to be close to you. It's more efficient for communication, right? Efficient, Izuku repeated, his brain struggling to keep up. Yeah, friends are supposed to hang out and be close, aren't they? Or is that not how it works? Did I miscalculate? Mei asked, her tone genuinely curious, though her grin suggested she wasn't all that concerned about the answer. Yeah, but not this close, Izuku stammered, shifting awkwardly as he tried to process how casually she spoke about the situation. Yeah, friends sit close when they need to talk, don't they? Or was I wrong about that? I mean, it just seemed like the logical choice, she said, tapping her chin thoughtfully before shrugging. Izuku flailed slightly, his face an even deeper shade of red. And not this close, Hatsume. Unfazed, Mei turned her attention to something else. Her sharp eyes caught a slight bulge in his blazer pocket, and her curiosity flared. Without hesitation, she reached over and plucked a pair of notebooks from the inside of his blazer, oblivious to his startled reaction. I can't read this one, Mei muttered, tilting her head as she flipped past the alien-related pages, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion. Yeah, that's because it's encoded, Izuku stammered, instinctively leaning forward, forgetting for a moment that Mei was still firmly perched on his lap. Her eyes widened, practically sparkling with excitement. Encoded, that's so cool, she exclaimed, her grin stretching ear to ear. What kind of encoding is this? Is it substitution ciphering? Maybe some kind of Vigenère variant? Or wait, is it steganographic layering with dynamic key rotation? Izuku blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the stream of technical jargon. Well, it's actually a mix of shift cipher and symbol mapping. I created the key myself to make it more secure. Izuku's face flushed crimson, his hands waving in protest as he scrambled to maintain his composure. Please don't try to decipher them. I prefer to keep my alien forms secret, he stammered, but the heat in his cheeks didn't subside. Meanwhile, Mei, utterly oblivious to the discomfort she was causing, shifted slightly, making herself even more comfortable as she leaned over him to study his notes. The other girls in the room, eyes narrowing in quiet irritation, watched as Izuku grew increasingly flustered. Yet, he didn't seem to mind the close proximity, and in fact, was starting to adapt to Mei's uncomfortably forward nature. Oh, what about this notebook? Mei asked, her tone already shifting to one of pure excitement as she picked up the number 13 inches notebook from his blazer. She began flipping through it with barely restrained enthusiasm. Not encoded. And wow, Midoriya, your notes are so detailed. You really know how to break down quirks, huh? Izuku scratched his head nervously. Really? Thank you, Mei. Mei ignored his modesty as she straddled her hips on his, a blush across her face. The girls collectively bristled, their faces burning with indignation as they watched Mei practically meld into Izuku's personal space. See this gravity girl, Mei began, tapping on Ochako's section. Wouldn't it be awesome if she had, like, rocket boots on her costume? She could glide while floating. Talk about maximizing her quirk's potential. She leaned in closer to show Izuku the drawing, her legs dangling behind him. Izuku's eyes widened, his brain instantly going into overdrive. Oh, wow, you're right. She could control her descent better and maneuver in midair. That'd make her mobility so much better in combat. Ochako, standing nearby, forced a polite smile, her irritation simmering just beneath the surface. That actually sounds useful, but... Mei cut her off, her focus entirely on Izuku. And this shoji guy, his dupli arms could use reinforced knuckle guards. Imagine him smashing through walls or shielding his teammates with a single swing. Talk about efficiency. Izuku's eyes lit up. You're right. With the added weight and durability, his punches would pack even more power. Without pausing, Mei flipped to another page. And this one, she tapped on Kyoka's profile. She's a mutant type, right? Her words were sharp, calculated, and she didn't even spare a glance at Kyoka, too absorbed in her analysis. Kyoka's eye twitched slightly, her annoyance simmering just below the surface. Yeah, I'm a mutant, so what? She muttered under her breath, but Mei didn't seem to hear her. Izuku was quick to explain. Kyoka's quirk allows her to channel sound through her earphone jacks, which are really versatile. She can plug them into anything and amplify the sound, or make it work with other devices. Mei paused, her finger resting on her chin as she absorbed the information. Can she plug into devices that don't have a proper port? She asked, her tone clinical as she analyzed the possibilities. I can, Kyoka answered with a touch of sarcasm. Mei, unfazed, grinned wildly. Well, then, I'm guessing her quirk can also amplify and redirect sound that a device might produce, or make new frequencies altogether. She tapped her fingers rapidly as though plotting the design for a new invention in her mind. You know, that's perfect. I can already see the awesome babies I'm going to make with these ideas. Kyoka, though clearly annoyed by being left out of the conversation, couldn't help but put Mei's ideas in the back of her mind. Despite her frustration, she couldn't deny the practicality of Mei's concept. Oh, that's amazing, Izuku began, but he was abruptly cut off by the clearing of throats from the rest of the girls at the table. A cold, murderous aura blanketed the room, making both Izuku and Mei break out into nervous sweats. Izuku, Momo said firmly, her tone calm but laced with an undercurrent of disapproval. I trust you don't believe this position is appropriate for public settings. Izuku blinked in confusion before realizing what she meant. His eyes widened, and his face turned a deep shade of red when he noticed Mei was still perched in his lap, her legs draped on either side of him, her face mere inches from his. I didn't realize. Midoriya, Abara's voice came, sharp and disapproving. Her vine-like hair bristled as if responding to her agitation. Please remove yourself from this situation at once. Such proximity is unbecoming. Kyoka folded her arms, tapping her fingers against her bicep. Yeah, you're not exactly making this look innocent, you know. Seriously, Hatsume, have you ever heard of personal space? Ochako clenched her fists on the table, her smile strained as her tone wavered between polite and envious. I mean, Dekiru, it's great that you're helping her with ideas, but maybe she shouldn't, you know, sit like that while you're talking. Mina leaned forward, her usual cheerfulness replaced with a mischievous yet pointed smirk. I dunno, Ochako, maybe Hatsume's just really comfortable around him. Izuku gulped, overwhelmed by the tension radiating from every direction. Hatsume, he stammered, nervously shifting in his seat. Maybe you should, Mei huffed but complied, sliding off his lap with a dramatic pout. Fine, she said, sticking her tongue out at the others. Midoriya, I'll see you after school, okay? The girls stiffened at her boldness, a pang of jealousy flickering across their faces. Momo's lips tightened, and Ochako's grip on her glass visibly tightened. Even Kyoka's earlobes twitched in irritation. Mei gave a quick wave, already halfway out the door. Oh, and I hope you don't mind if I take this. She held up Izuku's number 13 notebook, her grin wide as she sped off, leaving a trail of dust behind her. The girls felt their hearts tighten, their gazes heavy with a mix of confusion, irritation, and something else that simmered just beneath the surface. The air felt thick with unspoken words, and their eyes locked onto Izuku, all of them processing the same thing. Mina folded her arms and gave him a pointed look. You looked pretty comfortable with her on your lap, Midori, she remarked, her usual cheer gone, replaced by frustration. Izuku blushed and stammered, I didn't. It wasn't like that. Kanoko bit her lip, her eyes flicking nervously between Izuku and the others, clearly bothered by how close Mei had been. Yanagi, too, had a faint blush, realizing just how much it had affected her. Abara crossed her arms, her voice cold. So, You let girls straddle your lap, Midoriya. Itsuka shot him an irritated look. You didn't even try to get her off. Toru chimed in from her corner, her usual bubbly nature tinged with a hint of jealousy. I mean, it's not like you're into her, right? She asked, trying to sound casual. Ochako pouted, her voice soft but hurt. Dekiru. Suyu sighed, her tone firm. You should be more assertive, Izuku-chan. Izuku's face turned beet red as he stammered, hands nervously running through his hair. I mean, it wasn't that bad, he mumbled, trying to deflect the intensity of their gazes. As soon as the words left his mouth, the mood shifted, and Izuku could feel the weight of their eyes on him sharp, intense, like a mouse facing a pride of lionesses. His heart raced in his chest. Eep. Bakugo Katsuki stormed out of Class 1A's dorms, the sunset painting the hallways in a fiery glow that matched the burning frustration in his chest. 3 grueling hours of detention with Eraserhead had left him itching to blow something up. The teachers here were relentless, unlike Aldria's spineless losers. Every move he made, every word out of his mouth, seemed to come back to bite him in the ass. But that wasn't what had his stomach twisting in knots tonight. Do you know how many times he's hurt me? Ghost Freak's words rang in his head, like a hammer striking over and over against his skull. That bastard's voice wouldn't leave him alone, and the memory of those slashes, the deep, searing pain ripping across his body, was still too fresh. He growled under his breath, his hands curling into tight fists. His palms itched to explode something, anything, just to drown out the sound. But no matter how much he wanted to shove it down, those words wouldn't let go. He's just another villain in my story. His teeth grit so hard it hurt. He could still see it so clearly. Deku, standing there above him as Ghost Freak, his purple promising only malice. It wasn't Deku, but it was. Bakugo knew better than to believe the bullshit that came after. He punched the wall beside him, hard enough to leave a faint scorch mark, but not enough to satisfy the gnawing ache inside. Damn it, he muttered. The ponytail bitch had saved him. If it hadn't been for her stepping in, he would have died. Deku would have killed him. The memory made his stomach churn, half from anger, half from something he refused to name. He rubbed at his chest absently, trying to soothe the clawing sensation there. Because as much as he wanted to shove all the blame onto Deku, he couldn't forget the look in his eyes. All that rage, all that resentment, Deku had unleashed it all on him. Bakugo had always known the nerd hated him, but not like this. Not this much. The venom in his words, the fury in his eyes, it was like staring at someone else entirely. Someone who wanted him gone. For good. Deku. Hating someone. It should have been laughable. The nerd who cried over stray cats and admired everyone, even losers. But it wasn't funny. Because that hate was real. And worst of all, Bakugo knew he'd earned it. The thought made his blood boil, not with anger, but something worse. Shame. But Bakugo didn't do shame. He was the best, the strongest. He didn't owe anyone anything. Especially not Deku. So why did his chest feel like it was caving in? His footsteps slowed, a shaky breath slipping out as Ghost Freak's words clawed at his mind again, louder this time. His hand dragged through his hair, frustration bubbling under his skin. Damn nerd, he muttered, jaw tightening as if saying it might drown out the rest. As Bakugo walked, the familiar voice of Kirishima cut through his spiraling thoughts. Yo, Bakugo, Kirishima greeted, his usual toothy grin in place. For once, Bakugo didn't mind the sight of the redhead. It was a distraction, at least, from the damn nerd clawing at his thoughts. Shitty hair, Bakugo grunted, his tone less hostile than usual as Kirishima jogged up with Shiro and Kaminari trailing behind him. How's detention? Shiro asked, smirking knowingly. A vein in Bakugo's temple throbbed. Great. My hell continues, he growled, shoving his hands into his pockets. This is why no one likes you, Kaminari muttered under his breath, though it was loud enough for Bakugo to catch. Bakugo stopped dead in his tracks, turning to glare daggers at Kaminari. What the hell did you just say, Sparky? Kaminari flinched, holding his hands up defensively. Nothing, man, just joking. Better be, Bakugo snapped before turning on his heel, the tension in his shoulders slowly easing as Kirishima clapped him on the back. Relax, man, Kirishima said, trying to lighten the mood. You're free now, right? Let's grab something to eat. My treat. Zero chimed in with a grin. Yeah, maybe food'll mellow you out. For once. Shut it, tape face, Bakugo barked, but his lips twitched just slightly before they exited the school gates, the chatter of his friends pulling him, even if briefly, out of his own head. The barrier scanned for a moment longer before the gates began to part without incident. Most of the students froze as a woman strode through the gates of UA, her presence commanding immediate attention. Kaminari's jaw practically hit the ground, a blush spreading across his cheeks as he let out an awestruck whistle. Dude, she's a total babe, Kaminari whispered to Zero, already drooling. Hey, you have a girlfriend. You can't say stuff like that. Zero scolded, elbowing him hard enough to make Kaminari flinch. Please don't tell Esther, Kaminari pleaded, rubbing his side. Zero rolled his eyes but couldn't help stealing a glance at the woman. Still, she does look cool. Who is she? The woman was striking. Her mint green skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, head adorned with two tentacles that swayed subtly with each step. A third, larger tentacle extended from her lower back, moving fluidly behind her. She had an otherworldly physique. 4 long, dexterous fingers on each hand, and legs that bent inward at the ankles, ending in clawed toes. Her fitted blue jumpsuit only added to the air of mystery. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught their attention, it was the way she moved. Her sharp, focused gaze scanned the courtyard as if she were searching for someone vital. Her expression, though composed, carried the weight of urgency, and there was a distinct intensity that made most students instinctively step aside as she passed. A brave but nervous girl stepped forward. Hello, ma'am. She ventured cautiously. The woman's gaze snapped to her, and the sheer weight of her glare made the girl falter, shrinking back slightly. Where is Izuku Midoriya? The woman demanded, her voice authoritative, leaving no room for hesitation. The students around her froze. The name carried weight. Izuku Midoriya wasn't just a classmate, he was a hero in training whose exploits had become the stuff of UA legend. Bakugo, Kirishima, Zero, and Kaminari all turned at the mention of Izuku's name. They knew that when people were after Midoriya, it usually meant trouble. The woman's next words confirmed their worst fears. Where is the Omnitrix? Kirishima's eyes widened in horror, his fists clenching involuntarily. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, the words hitting him like a detonating bomb. His mind raced, connecting the dots. Only someone dangerous would be asking about that. No one who knew about the Omnitrix had come looking for it with good intentions. He didn't hesitate. Dropping his bag, he launched himself forward in an explosive rush, fury and instinct driving him. You damn alien, you're here for that stupid watch, aren't you? He roared, as he unleashed a barrage of blasts. The woman turned to face him, calm and unfazed. With a single flick of her wrist, Bakugo's charge was stopped midair. He floated helplessly, limbs flailing as an unseen force held him in place. Her eyes sharpened, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. I suggest you calm down, child. The courtyard fell deathly silent, everyone staring in stunned disbelief. Bakugo gritted his teeth, struggling against the invisible hold, but it was no use. The woman hadn't even broken a sweat. Kirishima's skin hardened with a grinding sound, like stones scraping together, as he charged forward. Let him go, he roared, his fists raised to strike. The woman barely spared him a glance. With a casual flick of her wrist, a violet aura enveloped Kirishima mid-charge. The air rippled with energy as she hurled him aside effortlessly. His body crashed into the UA wall, leaving a spiderweb of cracks across the reinforced concrete. Stay down, she said, her voice cold and clipped. Her tone carried no malice, only impatience, as if she were swatting away a bothersome fly. Bakugo struggled against her invisible grip, snarling through gritted teeth. Damn alien, what do you want with him? Her piercing eyes turned to him. Where is Izuku Midoriya? She asked again. Never heard of him. Bakugo spat, explosions crackling faintly in his palms as he tried to move. Hope you can forgive me, bro. Kaminari yelled, lightning dancing along his body. He launched himself at her, his electricity crackling like a live wire. Fry this tentacle freak, Bakugo barked. Indiscriminate 1.3 million volts. Kaminari shouted, the energy exploding outward in a blinding flash. Electricity surged toward her, the arcs splitting the air with deafening snaps. The woman didn't flinch. She shot upward into the sky, effortlessly dodging the oncoming attack with a graceful leap. Hovering above the ground, her mint green skin glowed faintly against the flickering light of Kaminari's electricity. Kaminari's grin faded as his body seized up. He felt his limbs lock in place, suspended by an unseen force. Wah! Before he could finish, she flicked her hand, and he was sent hurtling backward. He slammed into the ground with a dull thud, his electricity sputtering out like a dying flame. From above, she turned her gaze to Zero, who had been inching closer with his tape at the ready. Her eyes locked onto him, as if sizing up his every move. Zero froze as his feet left the ground, his body suspended in midair like a puppet on strings. Enough, she said sharply, her voice cutting through the chaos. Her patience visibly wearing thin. Zero struggled against the invisible grip, his voice shaky. What do you want? Her glare bore into him. Where is Izuku Midoriya? Achoo. Izuku sneezed suddenly, causing Momo to blink in surprise before quickly creating a handkerchief with her quirk. Here, Midoriya, she said, offering it with a small smile. Izuku took it gratefully and wiped his nose, muttering a quick, thank you, Yaoyorozu. Before he could say much else, Mei Hatsume appeared out of nowhere, grabbing him by the arm and dragging him over to her cluttered work desk. Now, Midoriya, if you would so kindly sit right here, she said, plopping him into a chair surrounded by unfinished inventions and parts. The girls from classes 1A and 1B followed him into the support studios, their curiosity evident as they glanced around at the tools, blueprints, and gadgets scattered across every surface. This place is nuts, Setsuna said, her sharp teeth glinting in a wide grin. She leaned closer to examine a prototype on one of the nearby shelves. So this is where all the tech magic happens, huh? First time I've ever been in here. It's got a kind of mad scientist vibe to it. Yeah, it's a little overwhelming, Pony added, her voice tinged with awe as her eyes darted around the room. She pointed toward a half-assembled gauntlet. What does that thing do? Oh, is that a jetpack? Kanoko wandered near a shelf stacked with gadgets, her wide eyes scanning the various tools and devices. So this is the place my nifty shroom shooter was made, huh? She said, a hint of pride in her voice. Yanagi floated a small screwdriver into her hand as she examined some of the designs. I don't have a support item, she said thoughtfully, her voice calm as always. Though, it would be nice to have something tailored for my quirk. Yui stood silently alongside Momo and Kyoka, observing the bustling energy of the support studios. Nearby, Ochako lingered next to Itsuka, who had her arms crossed, tapping her foot nervously. At the center of it all, Mei was perched at her workbench, tinkering with what appeared to be the head of a robot. Izuku sat next to her, glancing over the mechanical piece. It had a distinctive design resembling a samurai's helmet, complete with crown-like horns but lacking any facial features. I've never seen a robot with this kind of design before, Momo remarked, her curiosity piqued as she studied the intricate craftsmanship. Who made it? Mei cackled softly, her goggles glinting under the workshop's light as she turned the headpiece over in her hands. No clue, she said with a broad grin, her face a little too close to Momo's for comfort. Momo blinked, leaning back slightly. You don't know who built it? Nope, found it in a junk pile a few months back and thought, hey, free parts. So, I dragged it home and started poking around. And hoo boy, this baby is special. Mei practically shoved the headpiece toward Momo, who instinctively caught it before Mei bounded back to her notes. Wait, hold on, Yanagi cut in, you have no idea who built this thing, and you're just messing with it anyway. Of course I am, Mei said cheerfully, spinning on her heel and invading Yanagi's personal space next. That's how you figure stuff out. She gestured dramatically at the samurai head. This thing is insane. The central processing unit isn't just advanced, it's borderline miraculous. It's using some kind of crystalline material instead of standard silicon or semiconductors, Mei explained, flipping her goggles up. And the energy efficiency, off the charts. It can compute so fast it makes everything else look like cheap calculators. Izuku and rest of the girls blinked confused at what Mei had said. As Momo's eyes widened, her intrigue growing. That advanced. That's incredible. Yanagi tilted her head as she glanced at the faceless machine. Why does it look like a samurai helmet? It's kinda cool, actually like a faceless samurai. Yeah, it's super neat. Mina added as she and Toru wandered around the studio, checking out various gadgets. As Mei continued tinkering with her project, Izuku couldn't help but glance at the various unfinished gadgets scattered across the workspace. With a small gulp, he finally asked, Hatsume, how come you wanted me to come here after school? Mei barely looked up from her work, pushing her goggles up to her forehead as her other hand scribbled frantically on a blueprint. Izuku noticed the faint shadows under her eyes and her somewhat disheveled appearance. As Mei continued tinkering with her project, Izuku couldn't help but glance at the various unfinished gadgets scattered across the workspace. With a small gulp, he finally asked, Hatsume, how come you wanted me to come here after school? Mei barely looked up from her work, pushing her goggles up to her forehead as her other hand scribbled frantically on a blueprint. Izuku noticed the faint shadows under her eyes and her somewhat disheveled appearance. Hatsume, when was the last time you slept? He asked, his concern obvious. Oh, that's easy Thursday, she said casually, still jotting down notes without missing a beat. Izuku froze for a moment. But, today's Wednesday. Mei blinked, her pen pausing mid-stroke. Oh, she shrugged, entirely unbothered. Well, who cares? Sleep is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I have babies to make. She grinned widely and immediately returned to multitasking, now flipping through a set of diagrams while soldering something with her free hand. Ochako winced. That doesn't sound healthy. Healthy, please. I don't have time for healthy, Mei retorted with a dismissive wave of her hand. Especially after that big fiasco a couple of weeks ago. She reached for another tool and began tinkering with a gadget that looked like a wrist-mounted grappling hook. Ever since then, I've been working on some amazing new babies. Especially with all the notes and tips Brainstorm left me you left me, Midoriya. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise at her slip-up. Brainstorm. Mei quickly waved off his reaction, grinning cheekily. Don't worry about it, you're so full of ideas you probably don't even remember half the genius things you say. And I mean genius. Look at this. She thrust a glowing piece of circuitry under his nose, forcing him to lean back slightly. This baby is designed to triple energy efficiency without overheating. Pretty cute, huh? The rest of the girls exchanged glances as Mei continued her whirlwind of activity. Despite her eccentric behavior, they couldn't help but notice the similarities between her and Izuku. Both of them were intense, overly focused, and completely oblivious to their own exhaustion when they were engrossed in their passions. Wow, she really is like him, Momo murmured. Kyoka smirked faintly. A little too much, if you ask me. She's like Greenie but cranked up to 11. Yui, standing silently beside them, studied Mei with a faint glimmer of interest in her otherwise stoic eyes. The girl's relentless drive and focus struck a chord with her. Though she didn't outwardly react, the spark of admiration was clear in the way her gaze lingered on Mei's work. She's definitely a hard worker, Yanagi said softly. Maybe a little too hard. Someone should make her take a break, Ochako said. As Mei darted from one project to another, juggling tasks with dizzying efficiency, Mina chuckled. She's kinda like a mad scientist, huh? Izuku, meanwhile, tried to refocus the conversation. Hatsume, are you sure you're okay? Maybe you should take a quick nap or something. Mei laughed loudly, patting him on the shoulder. Oh, Midoriya, you're so funny. Sleep is for people who aren't busy changing the world. And besides, my babies need me. Izuku sighed, realizing Mei probably wasn't going to get any rest anytime soon. He hesitated before asking again, Hatsume, you still haven't answered my question. How come you wanted me to come here after school? Mei froze mid-motion, her tools clattering lightly onto the desk. For a split second, her energetic demeanor faltered, and she turned her gaze toward him. Her cheeks were tinged with an unmistakable shade of pink. Izuku blinked, startled. He had never seen Hatsume look flustered before. Hatsume. Mei hesitated, rubbing the back of her neck awkwardly. Then, Without any hint of restraint, she blurted, "Having you here with me, it makes me feel good. Especially when you're near me." The room went silent, every girl's gaze snapping toward Mei. Izuku's face turned scarlet, his heart hammering in his chest. Mei, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the growing tension. "I don't really know why," she continued honestly, shrugging with a small, sheepish smile. "You make my heart go crazy. It beats approximately 2 times faster whenever you're around." Izuku opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Meanwhile, the other girls felt a sharp pang of jealousy twist in their chests, each one glancing at the other with expressions ranging from discomfort to frustration. "And," Mei added, her eyes lighting up as her energy returned, "every time you're here, I come up with a dozen new baby designs." "Sue," she leaned in closer, practically pressing herself against him, grinning mischievously. "The only logical solution is to keep you close to me," Izuku yelped, leaning back as far as he could without falling out of his chair, his face now practically glowing red. Hatsume, that's..." Mei tilted her head innocently, completely ignoring his obvious discomfort. "What? It's just facts. You're like my good luck charm. A one-of-a-kind prototype, if you will." The tension in the room reached a boiling point as the girls exchanged uneasy glances. Ochako, whose heart was racing painfully, clenched her fists tightly. Her cheeks burned as she tried to ignore the surge of possessiveness threatening to spill over. Did she just?" Pony whispered, her ears twitching in disbelief. "See, confess," Momo asked, her heart pounding in her chest as her cheeks turned crimson. "Unclear," Setsuna muttered, though her wide eyes betrayed her shock. Mei, meanwhile, seemed unfazed by the commotion, a confident grin plastered across her face. Plus, a good inventor always keeps her most valuable prototype right next to her. And trust me, Izuku's top-tier market material. Ochako's hand slammed against a nearby table as she stood abruptly. "Dekiru isn't some thing. You can't just have him like he's one of your gadgets." Mei tilted her head, her gaze cool and analytical. Why not? If I recall correctly, he isn't in a romantic relationship. There's no patent on him yet." Ochako's face burned as she stumbled over her words, her emotions spilling out in one loud, desperate outburst. You can't have him because he's mine." The room went deathly silent. Izuku froze, his eyes widening as his mind struggled to process Ochako's sudden declaration. His heart raced, pounding so hard he thought it might burst. What?" he started, but his words were cut off by a loud explosion outside. "What?" Izuku started, but was cut off by a massive explosion outside. His head whipped toward the window, and his classmates followed suit. In the courtyard, the students of Class 1A and B were locked in a battle with a woman none of them recognized. Kyoka, who had been watching carefully, felt her breath catch in her throat as she heard the woman speak. "Enough," the woman's voice rang out, icy and commanding. "I've been more than patient. I'll ask again, for the last time, where is Izuku Midoriya? Where is the Omnitrix?" A strange, purple aura suddenly enveloped the entire courtyard, and Class 1A and B boys froze in mid-motion. Kyoka's eyes widened as she quickly unplugged her earphone jack, realization hitting her hard. "Green, she's after the Omnitrix." The girls froze, expressions a mix of confusion and surprise. Izuku didn't waste any time. His one-for-all crackled around him, green energy sparking off his body, eyes sharp and determined. "You guys get the teacher," Izuku commanded, his voice firm with authority. "Dekiru, I'm coming with you," Ochako said, her voice unyielding as she practically leapt onto his back before he could protest. Her hands gripped him tightly. "Ah, Ochako," Izuku grunted, startled by her sudden action. "I'm not letting you do this alone," Ochako insisted, determination blazing in her eyes. "We're doing this together, got it?" Izuku let out a frustrated sigh, realizing there was no getting out of it. "Fine, just hold on tight." With a single leap, they soared into the air, heading toward the courtyard. "Hey," Izuku shouted as he landed, the Omnitrix faceplate lighting up above his wrist. The woman below glanced up, her face softening slightly at the sight of him. "If you want the Omnitrix," Izuku started, but his words faltered. His arm, ready to activate the Omnitrix, stopped midair. His eyes widened, and before he could process the shock, the next words left him in surprise. Anti-X, Izuku shouted, completely caught off guard. The woman flicked her wrist, and suddenly, Izuku was frozen midair, the telekinetic force holding him in place. Her expression, though stoic, showed a faint smile, almost tender, but distant. The others gaped in confusion, their voices overlapping as they muttered, "Auntie." "Hello, Izuku," she said, her tone blunt, almost businesslike, but with a trace of something softer. She gently lowered him to the ground before grabbing his wrist, where the Omnitrix lay. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she glanced at it, her expression a mixture of frustration and something more somber. She sighed, almost regretfully, as she looked at the device, her voice softer but still firm. "I'm too late. The night air was thick with smoke, the sounds of pro-heroes and firefighters rushing through Musudafu filling the streets. The distant blaze cast an eerie emerald glow over the city, signaling the horror unfolding. Backdraft, the pro-hero renowned for his firefighting prowess, was among the first to arrive at the scene. His face, usually stern and composed, was now etched with concern as he surveyed the burning structure. "Stay close and stay low," Backdraft barked, ushering the students away from the advancing flames. "We need to ensure all students are accounted for and evacuate the area immediately." His hoses extended, spraying a fine mist to suppress the flames, but the fire was relentless. The school's main clock tower, its hands frozen at 11:10, swayed precariously before collapsing in a fiery cascade. The sound of the explosion echoed through the night, followed by a rain of burning debris. "This is a disaster," Backdraft muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of life. "We need to get these kids out of here, now." He summoned a thick wave of water to contain the flames in the immediate area, but the fire roared in defiance. "Aldera Junior High won't survive much longer if we don't get help," he shouted, pushing forward to evacuate the students. From the shadows of a nearby building, a dark figure observed the destruction. The black-haired boy grinned wickedly, his eyes gleaming as he scrolled through his phone. The images on the screen were of Aldera's past student files, names, schedules, even where they are right now. Alongside teachers. Every detail was carefully stored in his phone. "They thought I was a freak before." His voice was laced with bitterness as he ignited his palm with dark emerald flames. "Well, guess what? I'm back." A cruel grin spread across his face as his hand balled into a fist, the fire surging with power. With a sadistic chuckle, he hurled a fireball toward the already burning school, the explosion that followed echoing through the night. The blast rocked the area, and the boys' laughter mixed with the roar of the flames. And it's payback time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.